Good evening and welcome to the West Hartford Public Schools Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, June 4th, and it is a little after 7. I'm going to ask Cammie to please call the roll.
Mrs. Blanks,
Here?
Dr. Greenberg,
Here.
Mr. Polun,
Here.
Ms. Polun,
Here.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson,
Here.
Mr. Zdanowitz,
Here.
Okay, since our student reps aren't here, I'm going to ask our veterans to lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, actually, we do have a little revision to the agenda order, which is towards the end of the meeting where we're going to switch. And that's depending on our student reps who are at other activities this evening and will be joining us a little later. So depending on the time that they arrive, we may need to switch under information and reports where we will have reports from student reps first, and then it will be followed by board members' communication and reports. So we don't have any student participation. I don't believe anyone has signed up for public communication. We don't have any unfinished business. So we will move right into new business, where a motion by Cheryl Greenberg, Robert Levine, and Deb Polun to approve reviewed policy 1325. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the following policy, which was reviewed by the Board Policy Subcommittee, 1325, non-school promotions and advertising. And then B, which is motion, by Cheryl Greenberg, Robert Levine, and Deb Polun to accept revised policy 5610 as a first reading, and the recommendation that the Board of Education accept as a first reading the following policy, which was revised by the Board Policy Subcommittee, 5610, administration of medicines by school personnel, and then C, that's it. Okay. All right, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So this is regarding policy 1325, non-school promotions and advertising. And all we've done simply in this policy is add the words on school grounds under number 5. So our current policy is that we do not allow promotions and advertising within a school. And the policy committee debated whether we ought to allow advertising on sports fields. It's the current practice that we do not allow advertising on sports fields, although we don't have that written in policy. We had a very healthy debate about this topic. We reached out to some other towns to find out what they do, other districts. There are a few who do allow advertising on sports fields, and it does generate a little bit of revenue, but it raises a number of other issues as well. Ultimately, the policy committee has recommended to continue to not allow advertising on sports fields, and we use the phrase on school grounds to incorporate any other outdoor place that is part of a school, including a parking lot or any other place that's part of a school. So that is the recommendation of the policy committee, to add into policy that advertising will not occur anywhere on school grounds.
Questions?
If I can just comment, yeah, we did have this debate, as Deb said, and we did decide not to include it, but we wanted to bring it up explicitly with the board in case anyone wanted us to revisit that question and have the discussion about whether we should be able to have advertisements on the field. So if there's any question, we're happy to revisit it, but our thought was not to do that, but not to preclude that conversation.
What about all the local companies that support, like Safe Grad and things like that? They're in, I would imagine, a pamphlet or something, and I guess they would get recognized somewhere, right? So how about that?
That's a great question, and you can carry that forward to programs for school concerts, for school plays. I believe some of the sports teams even have programs. I think the football team has a program. So programs are a separate issue that is not considered to be the same type of advertising as, say, a banner would be.
The thought is that if you don't want to take you don't have to see the advertising if you don't want to. You don't have to take the program, but a banner is there for everybody. And so that's what distinguished it in our minds.
If I could, Mark, also legally, it really has to do with also who it's directed towards. Programs and such, the advertising in there is really by parents or by local businesses, and it's addressed or geared towards parents versus putting up a banner for Coca-Cola in a hallway that a student, regardless of whether or not they want to, has to see because they're mandated to be in school.
All right, we ready for the vote?
Carol, since you brought up them both as one motion, do we vote for them separately or at the same time? We still do, even though you said them at the same time, just making sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, so for the second one, we kind of ready for a motion. Okay, so for B, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Ready for the discussion?
Okay, this one's my turn. This is about administering medicine by school personnel, and it looks like a whole lot of changes, but actually it's fairly small. In actual change, it's mostly clarifications. The two major things to notice are that the reason that we took this up in the first place is that the list of people who could prescribe medicine was limited but to a smaller number than who are allowed to prescribe. And we knew that there were conversations about whether other groups, individuals like therapists, for example, might be allowed to prescribe in the future. And so in order to make sure that only appropriate people could do it legally, but to broaden the list and make it clear and be flexible for the future, we changed that you needed a written medication order of an authorized prescriber, meaning legally authorized. And then we give the explicit list that is current now, just to be clear, but leaves room for changes later. Other things are just clarifications of policies that we already have, and the other addition is about allowing students to have medicines during off-campus and travel programs, so that if there's any problem in terms of anything that they need, they can take it with them.
Cheryl, if I might add one thing, the other piece that it explicitly allows is the change in the law over the last summer to allow students to self-possess and self-administer certain medications.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, yes, to mention that. Right, so in other words, it simply brings the policy up to date. It doesn't change anything substantive except for those things, but it looks like a lot of change because a lot of the language had to be clarified as a result.
Questions or comments? Are we ready for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Now, ratification of the security union contract. Recommendation that the Board of Education ratify the negotiated agreement between Local 1303-340 of Council Number 4, AFSCME, AFL-CIO Security Union, and the Board of Education for the period of July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2022. May I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And questions?
Good evening. Before you for approval is a ratified agreement between the Board of Education and the Security Union. And as the Board of Education knows, our 18 security officers play a critical role in each of our schools, maintaining a safe and secure environment for all of our students to learn in. And certainly, I know I can speak on behalf of all of us by saying we appreciate the work that they do day in and day out to support our students, to support our staff, and to support our parent community. The contract you're voting on this evening is a 4-year contract, calls for wage increases in the first year of 2%, and then subsequent wage increases of 2.25% in each of the next 2 years, and then that drops back down to 2% in the 4th year of the contract. For healthcare changes, we have been before the board several times now over the last several months, and we've talked a lot about the state partnership plan. So the security union will also join the state partnership plan, which is available for all municipalities throughout the state of Connecticut to take advantage of if they wish to. The security union will join the state partnership plan effective July 1st. And as participants in the plan, as we've talked about before, they will be required to participate in a very rigorous wellness program. And that wellness program calls for annual preventive visits, mandatory cholesterol screenings, mandatory breast cancer, cervical cancer screenings, mandatory colonoscopies. For folks with certain disease states like heart disease or diabetes, they will be required to participate in a disease education and counseling program. And if folks do not adhere to that annual wellness program, they will be subject to penalties of an additional $100 a month in health premiums, and then subject to additional deductibles, $350 individual deductible and a $1,400 family deductible. As we've talked about before in the past, we do feel that this plan does provide us with some stability in our healthcare costs. Their year-over-year increases have been about 2 percentage points lower than ours have been, with much less fluctuation. So we do feel that this will be a benefit for the Board of Education over the years to come. We will increase the premium cost share for the security union up to 19% effective July 1st, and then we'll have subsequent increases in each of the next 2 years as well. And the only other change we have is we are increasing the pension contribution. So for folks hired prior to 2010, they are in the old pension plan. Folks hired after that date are in a defined contribution plan. So for folks still in that old pension plan, they will see an increase in their pension contribution up to 5.75%. And that's all the changes that were negotiated with this contract. We'd be happy to answer any questions that the board had prior to voting.
Just to clarify, because the contract is dated as of 2018, 2019, so it's retroactive.
So the first year of wages will go retroactive to July 1st of 2018.
Right, but
2%.
the increased employee pension contribution doesn't change until this year, is that right?
Correct.
Or Is that retroactive too?
No, that's not
Okay.
retroactive. That's moving forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
For the
Okay,
next
thanks.
3 years. Good question.
Are we ready for the vote? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving right along to staff communication and reports, superintendent's report.
Okay, this has been really an amazing kind of past 10 days with the different things that I've been able to go to with not starting with, but the military induction ceremony. Thanks, Dave, for speaking at, and your words to those kids. It just always is just a special event. Thanks to Paul for his work with the Legion and putting this together. And a special touch this year that was different was at the end, a veteran of World War II stood with the flag, and then it was handed to a veteran of Korean conflict, then to Vietnam, Persian Gulf, and then currently, and then to a student that is taking on that role for everybody. And it was really touching to see. And then to follow that up during the week with award ceremonies at both schools, both of our high schools, and then to go into an elementary school and field day outside, see the kids participating, and then Interrel, then Unified Theater, which anybody knows is my favorite event in West Hartford, and then yesterday Rosina and I, as we do every year, met with Hall. We haven't done Conard seniors yet, but met with Hall seniors to talk about their 13 years of experiences, not just your 4 years at Hall, but all the way through, and really to get their honest feedback about where they thought things could have been better, what they appreciated, but just an overall really thoughtful group of kids that talked about some things and said, by the way, Mr. Moore, I'm sure it's different now than it was 8 years ago, and so but really gave both Rosina and I a lot to think about and just a great conversation. So just a really interesting few days. We get ready for our graduations next week as kids move towards final exams and summer plans. Tonight, I do want to say before his final presentation, Chip Ward, as we've said before, will be leaving us as he retires. And Chip knows the secrets of Connecticut from putting together, being one of those people that put together Connecticut's income tax, so that when Chip reads the budget now, he still comes to me and says, oh yeah, we did that, and then knows the tricks to say, oh, I get why they're doing that. I've just learned so much listening to that. When we talk about redistricting and what happened when the town redistricted, it's kind of a philosophical argument for many of us about what happened. Chip was here right afterwards talking about what happened, looking at the maps, and he knows the stories of those times. He oversaw financially the construction of 2 complete new schools, but then when you think of all of the renovations that have gone on in the other schools, and I can tell you from at the time when I was in Andy's position, at the beginning of the Charter Oak construction, and the people, the architecture firm, saying to me on a long ride, can you make Chip stop calling and yelling at me? Because you wonder why things are always on time and on budget. It's because of having somebody like Chip Ward overseeing it. He treated West Hartford's money like his own money, especially no more than during the recession in 07, 08, and the sage advice and counsel. I can tell you that he's been advisor to a lot of superintendents, but I don't think anybody listened to Chip, or maybe I can only speak for myself, enjoyed it as much as I did. And our first conversations in our lives really were when I was Conard's principal and I didn't know him much. And they were mostly arguments and disagreements about pretty much And now we sit together, and he's one of those people that I never have to wonder, is he telling me the truth? Because he will tell me the truth no matter if I like it or not. And to lose somebody like that day to day, but I look forward to still having him as a friend as he goes off on the trails, traveling, listening to podcasts, doing Chip things like teaching himself Latin just for fun. I want to say from West Hartford, from all the kids that he's had an impact on, because he has, and people don't always think of that, thank you for his service to our community.
Thank you, Tom, and I echo that, but we'll get to that a little later. All right, next up is Safe School Climate and Discipline Report, and we're going to welcome to the table Dr. Andrew Morrow, Ms. Shelley Solomon, Mr. Jamal Hines, and Mr. Eric Dempsey will report.
All right. Thank you for having us. I feel like I was just here. As you know, this is our annual report on discipline and suspensions. And when we talk about a report like this, it's more than just numbers, because every incident for us is significant and important because it involves a student. And we all recognize that kids make mistakes. And at all of our schools, we try and focus on behavior regardless of its label or category. Negative behavior is addressed in any form, and positive behavior is modeled and rewarded. What's important to us is a positive, safe climate that our schools work hard to build every day. In a moment, I'm going to ask Jamal, Shelley, and Eric to share some of the work that's being done at our high schools and across our district. Each school has a safe climate committee that's made up of teachers, administrators, parents, our school resource officers, our security officers, and students at the high school level. This group meets regularly, reviews data on the environment in their school, concerns that are being raised. It's an ongoing process we use to identify trends and to really direct resources and put interventions in place as needed. The overwhelming majority of West Hartford students conduct themselves safely and appropriately, and they contribute to this safe learning environment. However, some step out of line, as we expect kids to do. And this year we've had, I'll run through the numbers very quickly for you, 188 suspensions for serious infractions as defined by the State Department of Education. 63% of those were served in school versus out-of-school suspensions. We've had 4 verified cases of bullying. We've had 2 expulsions, as you see in the data. Actually, now we've had 3, because many of our board members were part of a hearing the other day. That was our 3rd expulsion for the year. I'd also like to note, if you look at the chart, serious offenses, you'll note that we have a rise in 3800, which is the drug, alcohol, and tobacco. You'll see that between the 2 high schools, we have 54 instances. I will share with you that 46 of those 54 instances involve e-cigarettes in some form. That's where vaping gets recorded. And as Shelley and Jamal and those who know the work that we've been doing this year with Community of Concern can share, that this is, we are seeing this across the state, across the nation, and are working very hard to address that concern. But that's where you see those instances and that increase. When we look at suspension rates, we look at and analyze data by grade and race to identify and address trends and concerns. And as we've talked about before, while we are significantly better than the state and the national averages, our suspension rates for both Black and Hispanic students are still considerably higher than they are for white students. This is a problem that we are working on. It's a problem that we are committed to resolving. But I also share it's a problem that we're encouraged by the trend over last year. We've seen a 21.4% drop in the incident rate of suspension for Black students this year compared to last year. We've seen an 18.8% drop in the incident rate of suspension for Hispanic students this year compared to last year. So while we are still seeing that gap and that discrepancy, we are closing that gap, and it's something that I do think we're making progress on. The disparity is a concern we're highlighting and addressing. We're working to resolve this through our continued work on racial justice training, our continued work with CSIs and student-led workshops with EDC, with the ongoing cultural competency training that we're doing, with the training that we're continuing to do at the middle school and high school level for the CPS work. We're also trying to continue our work of examining policies and practice with our Safe Climate Committees and with EDC. A little bit later, Eric's going to talk about our new anonymous reporting system, which, as you know, we put into place this year as one of the recommendations from the Secret Service on preventing school violence, and it's been very successful in helping us address concerns and, most importantly, provide help to students that really need it, and that's where we've seen a lot of success with that. We're working hard each day to develop community and communication within our schools as a key focus, and I'm going to ask Jamal and Shelley to share some programs and activities in their building to really give you a sense of what happens in a high school when students make sometimes some poor choices.
I can start. I think first and foremost, to echo some of what Andy talked about with regards to what we've done in order to lower the suspension rates of our black and brown children is, in addition to those things, we at Conard High School, and I know Hall feels the same way, is that it's so important for us to establish relationships with kids. And one of the things that I love about discipline is the fact that when kids come down and we see them at their worst, their absolute worst, they don't want to talk to us. A lot of them are way more concerned with what the consequence is going to be as opposed to trying to change the behavior, because we all know that consequences don't necessarily change behavior. What they do is just hold the student accountable for the action that they committed. What changes behavior is how can we affect a student's heart? How can we affect the student's soul? How can we get to a student where that they want to be better? Not just that they said I'm sorry, but that they mean it. And not just that they mean it, but now they want to go and make things right with whomever they've wronged. And I can't tell you how many countless conversations I've had with students when they've come into my office crying or cursing, or a combination of the two, right, a combination of the two, and we talk. And I'm able to, I see a hint of remorse in the eyes. And once that happens, I gotcha. And it's at that point where now we can start the healing. Now we can start kids to thinking about how to be better, how to make things right. The other piece that's really important is that as an admin team, we calibrate what we do all the time. I can't tell you how many informal drop-ins that we have with each other to make sure that we're not being too heavy-handed with a consequence or that we're being too lenient with a consequence. We, all three of us APs, talk together, and then we will go, if it's a suspension, in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, we go and we talk to Julio just so that he can make sure that our calibrations are in the best interest of the child, because that ultimately is what we're looking for, to make sure that what we do is in the best interest of the child. One of the things that Andy talked about was the e-cig vaping epidemic that is all over this country, and we're feeling the same thing. One of the things that we've decided to do, in addition to when we catch kids vaping, we refer them to our drug and alcohol team, not necessarily for them to go through the entire process of the 3 meetings, but we have created an educational component where some of the frequent flyers that we've had in our offices, we've signed them up for a quote unquote mandatory class where it is being conducted by our school social worker, school counselor, and they educate our kids on the dangers of vaping and what are some healthy alternatives to it. In addition to that, we talk to parents and communicate with parents, because that's another piece that's really important, is to have the relationships that we build with parents, and we bring them into the fold, because if we have buy-in from parents with the things that we're going to do, then it makes our life that much easier when we can have the support at home as well as the support at school. So students often understand that you've got your parents at home, but we're sort of going to be that way here. I'll let Shelley speak to some of the other things that I know we share, some of the things that we do, but I wanted to make sure that you all understood that it's not just about consequencing. It's really about building the relationships, and that's what we feel like we do best, is build those relationships. Our numbers prove it, the survey data shows it, and we just act upon it, and we leverage that in order to positively affect kids to change.
He just said it all. No, actually, I just want to add, I think one of the pieces, and you said it, but you didn't use the word restorative. And I think for me, a lot of it, and for all of the admins, it's about restorative justice. So you make a mistake, but you need to learn from that mistake. And we do things depending on the consequence. There's always an educational component, whether it's the formal for the tobacco education or the drug and alcohol team. You get your consequences, but then you have to do some research. You have to understand, and you have to produce a statement that acknowledges that. I also, and I know that my fellow assistant principals at Hall, we often bring our school counselor in or the social worker whenever we have any kind of discipline going on, because there's always fallout from it, well above and beyond getting the detention or the suspension. So there's always some follow-up, and often we might ask the school resource officer to have a couple of meetings with students so they understand that how their behavior resulted. We always contact a parent. I often, with older students, say, you need to call your parent right now in front of me, and you tell them what you did while I'm here with you. So we try to help the kids take ownership of what they've done. I've had students write letters of apology to teachers or to their other fellow students. We do mediations with students, with the counselor, school counselor. Each of them have an advocate on their side. We're very lucky, I think, and all of us probably, we give consequences, and I have heard students say as they leave my office, thank you. And that takes a lot of work, but they know that they can come out. Just quick example, I was away yesterday, had a student come in this morning, angry. They're making me take my phone away. They're making me leave it in your office every day for the rest until exams. And I sat down, and by the time he left, he said, yeah, I get it. Because he didn't, it's not the first time he had the phone infraction. In terms of the vaping, I think that you see an increase because we're much more vigilant. I also think that our fellow students are much more vigilant and don't want that in their bathrooms. So we're together between the parents, students, teachers, and staff. I think that we're all looking to keep our schools safe for everybody. Breathing is an inalienable right that we need, and we don't want kids not to be able to go to the bathroom and feel comfortable. So we put a lot of effort in at Hall. We've had, both Hall and Conard had 2 different workshops in the evenings. We have put signage up in and outside of the bathrooms, some student created. We have 2 committees. We have this Safe School Climate Committee that Andy was referencing, but we also at Hall have a student faculty committee made up of students and staff that discuss issues and resolution to those issues. So I think in all ways we try to make our schools the safest, welcoming environments we can for everyone.
We have an incredible asset in our assistant principals at both of our high schools and at our middle schools. And I will tell you, as will a number of people who in this room who have done that job at some point in their career, there are very few positions where you can make more of an impact on our students than as an assistant principal at the high school level. And so I applaud all the great work that they've done and really appreciate what they do each day to bring humanity with our students, to help them sometimes see better choices, and to help them at the end of the day realize that they can be better people, because I think that's ultimately our job with it. I'm also going to ask Eric to talk a little bit about the safety and security. roles that we've taken on this year. As you know, we put this paramount in our goals and our concern, and so whether it's the physical construction, whether it's the soft skills that we've been teaching students and faculty and our principals, I'd like Eric to elaborate a little bit on what we've done so far this year.
Thank you. Good evening. Just want to highlight a couple of the programs that were completed and we're still working on throughout the district. We started our year off with the Stop the Bleed tourniquet training that the principals and directors attended. Heck of a way to start the year, but they go, along with our bleed control kits that are inside the school. It was a partnership with the West Hartford Police Department. Dr. Kamen, an emergency room physician, it's one of our parents as well, gave his own time to help train our staff. And it's something we hope to have eventually all students trained in within the coming years, because it's a vital skill I think that everyone should have in addition to CPR. As Andy touched upon, our Anonymous Alerts app, it's not only an app, it's also on our webpage where students, parents can access and report a variety of different things to us. Within, I think, less than 12 hours of that going live, we got our first alert, which turned out to be a real one, that a student was in a crisis, and we were able to provide the help that student needed. To date, there's approximately 62 instances that were reported and safely addressed through the use of the app. So I think it's been a tremendous success to date, and I think it's something we're going to carry on for future years to come. Our tabletop crisis scenario exercises for all leadership, we've been doing that as frequently as possible. It's a great opportunity in a non-stress environment to address a potential stressful topic, be it a bomb threat or a custodial situation. Principals and staff get to talk about how they would handle it. We've done it at some of our Safe School climate committees and our security meetings as well to go through it, and it's been a learning experience for everybody, I think, on how to handle these situations. I think it's been a great success as well. We've been doing workshops not only for staff, paraprofessionals as well. I helped out with West Hartford Police in doing a workshop for safety and security for our paras. We're actually going to be doing one next week as well for the rest of the staff that wasn't able to attend. Our drills are on target. We're following up, wrapping up our drills for the end of a year, our emergency response crisis drills and fire drills following state guidelines, which we will be reporting to the state at the end of the year as required by state statute. We're applied for and received round 4 of grant funding for physical security improvements within the schools. We were awarded $350,000 to continue with improvements for safety and security inside the school, so that's a very positive thing. We're also, this parlays into our school entryway projects that we're going to be continuing. I believe Bugby, Conard, Aiken, the ones that are taking place this summer. We're going to be following, like we've seen at maybe Charter Oak or Sedgwick, a similar type of entry system, a more secure entry system for our students and staff, where they have to go through a 2-phase check before coming into the building. We also are going to be starting our classroom locks. We've done it for the elementary schools. It's going to be for the secondary schools as well, where teachers will be able to lock their classroom doors from inside the school with a universal key, where they don't have to go into the hallway to physically lock the door in an emergency situation. It's also better hardware, newer, up-to-date locks, so for a more secure classroom. We're going to be, we've purchased at some of the schools as well, lockdown shades. We're going to be implementing for any classrooms where there might be glass or windows where the students could be exposed or vulnerable during a lockdown situation, so you won't have a direct line of sight at the students. We're going to be finishing up with several more of the schools. We just took all the measurements for the remainder of the elementary schools, and we're going to be getting an estimate and hopefully implementing that over the summertime as well. Mandated reporter training was completed throughout the district. Active shooter training, I know some of you attended that. That was done by the West Hartford Police, where they utilized our school, to practice. Not only is it great for the police to be familiar with our buildings, it's great for us to test our security to see how it works in conjunction, with a police response, because our job is to allow law enforcement into the building in an emergency situation where we're in a lockdown scenario. So we want law enforcement officers to be able to rapidly get into our building. You might have seen on the news, or you will tonight, as a result of the Parkland shooting that took place. The school resource officer was arrested as a result of me not going into the building. And having watched this training with the West Hartford Police, I could confidently say that that would never be the case in this district, because the officers have received the training and they would be the first ones going in through the door. So I think it's great. We're going to continue to allow police access to our buildings. We've also provided, the West Hartford Police have been doing SRO training for all SROs in the state, coming in, school resource officers into our schools and practice, how they would clear a hallway, clear a building. So we encourage them to continue to use our facilities. Our new digital radio system, that's a joint effort with the West Hartford Police Department. We were the first to go live with it. The police department has not as of yet, but it's a enhanced digital radio system. The feedback so far at the schools where there's been gaps in coverage, drop signals from the regular radio, they say the new system's been phenomenal. So we have direct access to the police department, direct access to 911, believe it or not, from the radio. So if there's a situation where even cell service might be lacking, you can call directly to the 911 dispatch center through West Hartford Police Department. And we'll have direct contact. So even if there was, West Hartford can contact any one of our schools, our elementaries included, directly over the radio, and if there had to be a lockdown or a suspicious person in the area, and phone is not the quickest method, they could literally contact the principal via the radio and communicate any vital information over the radio. So we're actually in the process of ordering more radios for the elementary schools as well, so we could have outdoor recess, PE when they're outside, also have that important communication via walkie-talkie as well. So
one of the great new systems with new capabilities with the radio system that we actually had observed in place at a school where we had an incident where we had police responses. We were able to set up a zone where police on site and our security officers were talking on the same frequency and sharing that frequency. So we weren't having to go back and forth between, and so that just when we talk about how we're approaching an emergency situation, the more that we can make it seamless for people to communicate with one another, the better it is. So, anything else? Good. So again, thank you, Eric, as well. Lots of information, I know, and I hope that I hope you have some questions. I hope you also understand that it's not perfect, in that we don't expect it to ever be perfect. Dave will tell you, I used to tell all of the sixth graders on the first day of school every year at Bristow, when we had them into the auditorium and they were all nervous because it was the first time they'd ever been there, and they're all holding their backpacks like shields in front of them. I always told them that we expect you to make mistakes, but we expect you to learn from them, and we expect you to be better people for it. And I think that's really the takeaway of what our system is and how we approach it. So at that, I would say, any questions we can answer.
So, Shelley, I don't know if you caught me laughing, but when you said you have the kids in and they call the parents, it reminds me of a story that I was there for, where we got in trouble and my friend's parents spoke Spanish and so did he. I had to call my parents and tell them what happened, and he called and said, "Hey, I got student of the month," and no one knew the difference. So you got to have maybe a translator in there because it was, and that's a true story. Anyway, vaping. Maybe I'm old and I'm not in this. That's not my wheelhouse. But I was at Celebrate West Hartford this weekend, and I was coming out of the parking lot, and the smoke came over me, and I was like, I don't know kind of what that is. My 13-year-old, my youngest, that's marijuana. I did not know. It was a different smell that I guess I was used to, because it wasn't like I didn't know it. It just took me more. Wasn't instantaneous. And I was like, okay. So I'm imagining those things, they must smell much different now than they used to.
Some of them don't smell at all, and that's or give off much smoke
and that's
either.
Where I was going, so exactly where I was going. So if you catch someone vaping, how do you guys know if it's actually drug or not?
We actually, our SRO tests it. Yeah, I mean, they can test a very minute amount, and then the consequence
Is different,
changes
right.
depending whether it is or not.
So no matter what, if it's like, if they get caught vaping, no matter what, it gets tested, or it has to be?
Yes.
Okay.
And if they get caught, and they're not necessarily caught actually vaping, but they're in an environment where there has been vaping, we do a safe search on all students that come in with security, and if they have it in their possession, even if they're not an active user.
Okay.
We check for everything. And I want to say that we have many people that speak Spanish at school, so we always make sure we know what they're saying, because you can't necessarily trust what they're speaking.
Yeah, right. It's going to be the Cantonese next door, or something.
Exactly.
Then the other piece is the reach and strive. You talked about training the security guards. And you go to different schools, and those resource officers are in those schools, and they know them better than anybody, really. But what about the Reach and Strive program, off-site, not a lot of people there, not a lot of resources? Is there additional training that goes on there for any, incidents and accidents? Yeah.
As far as like the training for the security that responds there, or?
Yeah, so, if you're at KP, for instance, you have multiple security guards, and you can have a course of action X or Y to respond. That's a much smaller program. I just want to know what the backup resources are in case of any instances of violence or something.
What we've always done, Mark, is that the Reach, obviously Reach being on Conard's campus, shares that security, and they routinely are in.
I'm talking about the School for the Deaf.
Okay, but you mentioned Reach and
I know,
Strive.
I apologize.
For Strive actually has a full-time security guard that is on campus at Cogswell, and that if we ever need a response, or if that security guard ever needs help, he knows to contact Eric, again, over the system, and we have an immediate response then either from Hall or from Conard.
If I could, one of the people, and you might as well bring him up since I've brought him up enough times during your tenure, Mike Davis at Strive, who oversees the Strive program, knows Eric, knows police protocols. He's incredible, because they'll have activity relatively frequently just with kids, and the way Mike handles things is remarkable in conjunction with our security. He is one of the most valuable people of West Hartford that not many people know.
And then you talked about the $350,000 for Bugby and Aiken for that. What additional resources do you need to make every school here in West Hartford safe? And how long of a project would it be, and how expensive? And what additional monies do you need to make that happen sooner than later?
We addressed that, and actually, you guys addressed that and voted for that in your capital budget. You've allocated $2 million over the next 2 years to enhance to in essence harden our entryways. And so while we're doing this summer, Conard beginning Bugby, Aiken, and I believe Webster Hill are slated for this summer, the rest of the schools are also in the works then for the following summer and the year after that.
So that completes them all then?
That will complete all of them, yes, to the point where we're very comfortable with the entrances.
And
They won't all be the exact same.
They're not all the
entrance,
same. No, it's not all the same, because obviously there's different configurations.
Right.
in each.
So I guess let me ask you this, is KP done?
There are plans for KP.
Okay. And then you talked about does that budget also include the shades for the windows and such?
Correct. Yes.
For all the schools as
Yep.
well? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, Cheryl, you're up.
Thank you. As usual, I have a bunch of questions. I'll go in the same order that you did. Andy, first of all, I just want to say, Jamal and Shelley, I've seen both of you in action, and it's a privilege to watch. You're really both incredibly effective and wonderful, so thank you for that. And also Mike Davis, just want to say a shout out to him. He's my hero. Just a couple of questions, particularly about the suspension and expulsion things. First is just a numeric question. how many individuals is this? Is this a few kids acting out a lot, or is this a lot of kids making one mistake, or how is that working?
I would say yes. It is, there's always the case with any situation like this when we're looking at when we're looking at suspensions and so forth, that if you were to remove the top 5 students at each of the schools, the numbers would drop and our averages would drop substantially. Because as Jamal and Shelley can tell you, sometimes it takes longer to really make that connection and have a student understand that the path they're on, that the choices they're making are not really helping them in the long term, which is why we have sometimes alternative programs, which is why we have testings, and why we make sure through behavior plans and so forth that we're doing all we can for kids. And so it really is a little bit of both, and it's hard to sort of answer that with any more specifics.
I just wanted to say, I think there are some students that learn the first time, what Andy said, and some almost have their names emblazoned on the seats in our office, and more so as a freshman and sophomore, and then it reduces. So yes, there are some that are repeat offenders or frequent flyers that we like to call them, but it does diminish. But I think a large number, if we took those top 5 kids out, you would see a much smaller number.
I've 2 questions sort of related to that and how it's done. The first you sort of hinted at, but I just wonder if you can say a little bit more. Sometimes making them take responsibility and see the consequences, or relating to them and getting that remorse is enough. Sometimes there's an underlying issue. And I just wonder if you can say a little bit about how you go about addressing those if you see them, or what the process is of figuring out if there's some larger issue that needs addressing.
What we do often is we look at their history. We look at their log entries from as far back as we can. Usually it's the middle school, and we try to look at trends. Not only do we try to look at trends, but we work with our school counselors. We've got 2 great 9th grade counselors who are instrumental in us sort of getting a snapshot of each and every senior or each and every freshman that comes in to Conard, and so what we do is we meet with those counselors. We talk to them about students and what their challenges are, and so before we ever meet with a student, we sort of have a high level understanding of who they are, and then when they do make the mistakes and they come down to the office, now we can start to talk to them about, all right, this is something that we've seen that you did last year. It started to go away towards the end of the year, and now we're sort of back to square one. What's going on, and how can we help? And what worked then that we can sort of work with now in order to sort of get you on the right track. So it's more than just having a conversation. We do our homework, and kids are surprised at how much we know the first time we talk to them. A little unnerving, a little creepy to them, but they appreciate the fact that we've taken the time to do some background check on them and sort of understand coming in, hey, this is what I kind of know about you. And if you really want to be a cheerleader, if you really want to be a part of, the student union, you can't act like this. And how is that going to represent you? How is that going to represent your family? How is that going to, and it's at that point, we find where the buy-in is and hook that in with whatever restorative practice that we're trying to implement. And so, once again, it goes back to relationship building, understanding the kid, understand what the student needs and what their goals and dreams are, because a lot of times they get in their own way. And so we talk about, clearing pathways. Sometimes they're the ones that are setting up the roadblocks, and we got to help them clear it. And so that's sort of where we come from as well.
We actually build other roads. So but I think to add to that a little bit, before a student even comes in addition to the counselors meet with the 8th grade counselors, to get some information, and we meet with the assistant principals, so we have a broader picture. And I think we also, what we call in the social worker or the school psychologist and the counselor to meet with us with repeat offenders to try to look at what's underlying. Is it I'm not comfortable in some capacity, I'm not capable in some capacity. So we try to build resources to help the students feel successful so they want to be in the classroom.
I think one of the things also here is that oftentimes the assistant principal will be point people sitting on an IEP, on a PPT meeting, and even chairing PPTs, and they know the IEPs well enough to know, okay, we have inappropriate behavior here. Is this a manifestation of your disability? Because that's got to be handled differently than just, I was just doing this. And so how do we look at that? Are we talking to the school psychologist, school social worker, to get to the roots? And the other thing about discipline is, as they've all basically said, it's something else that we're teaching. And it's something else that, there's elements throughout the year where we've got to use that. It's, Jamal's talked about the conversation. A lot of the times it's look at me. And it's look at me for a reason. Pay attention to me. And that's where the conversations and how you really know them come.
Sort of a subsection D, as it were, to the same question is that I appreciate your calling attention to the racial disparities, and I think obviously they are something we're all concerned about. But I also notice that there were 2, now 3, expulsions this year. There were 11 2 years ago. As you pointed out, there's been a 21% drop in the number of black students suspended, et cetera. I just want to know if you can identify for yourselves, you don't have to say anything here, but do you have a sense of what has worked so dramatically in those ways so that we can keep building on it?
I think we're helping build connections for our
kids.
Students in all different ways, whether it's clubs, activities, getting them involved, making sure that they're active in the school, life of the school, not just in the classroom of the school. And I think having the grade 9 counselors has helped that. I've witnessed a counselor say, come on, you know what club do you want? Let me walk you to that club. So I think when kids feel connected, then they're going to abide by the rules more easily and want to be a part of the environment instead of exclude themselves from it.
I think another piece to that is we let all of our kids know under no uncertain terms that we are invested in them. Whether it's a black child, brown child, white child, it doesn't matter. Those kids, when they come into our offices, they know you matter to me. You matter to this community. And I'm not just going to give you a consequence and get you the heck out of my office. It's important that you understand that I care about you. And yes, some of this love may be tough, but the underlying word is love, period. And we don't hesitate to tell kids that. And I think that's important. And to be honest, our minority students have big time trust issues as far as teachers and people of authority. And so it's up to us to start to break those things down. And I think you're seeing the numbers decrease because our sensitivity, awareness, and communication and relationship building is increasing. And it's effectively helping all students.
Shelley and I have been here quite a while, and we've both been here during times when these numbers for expulsions were in the 40s and 50s. I mean, 40s and 50s, and I want to say years above 50s. And there was about 10 years ago a question of, are we not expelling enough kids? Are we just keeping kids in? And I'm glad to see that question's kind of melted away. Because one thing I will say, and I don't know if you'd agree, Shelley, I was in Connor in the 90s when there was dozens plus of expulsions. I go through there now. Connor is way safer than it was then.
I absolutely agree. I think Hall is absolutely as well. And not just because we have the double doors now or we have more security guards, but I think everybody takes pride in being in both schools. And they want to behave. They want to be there. And I think that we do a better job of nipping things sooner so that it doesn't get to that point. We provide programming for students, whether it's in the individual high school or they go to the alternative program for REACH, or they go to Strive if they have those issues that we identify, which is why it's important that we work as a team, the assistant principal, the counselor, the case manager if they're a special ed student, and the parent. So, I mean, as long as we all work together, I think that that's part of the reasons that we've seen that reduction in expulsions and suspensions overall as well.
I just want to flag something that you guys mentioned in the report, but not as much here, which is, I think another improvement may have come because of the emphasis on cultural competency things. I mean, our concern, we've talked about this before as a board, is not just how to get kids to not act out as much, but also whether teachers are identifying certain behaviors as problematic in some students and not others. And so to the extent that I know that you've been doing work on that, work on systematizing the issues, that I just want to flag that too and encourage even more.
But just very quickly, this year, one of our focus at Hall was cultural competency, and we have a group of teachers that have taken that charge, and we have spent the year doing work related to Zaretta Hammond's work about understanding the brain and the different ways we learn and the way we respond and we act, and it's going to be a 2 to 3 year project. So it's been hands-on active for teachers. We've also, 2 years in a row, have had students. We've had our LGBTQ community representatives. We've had our kids, black and brown. We've had our Hartford kids speak to our faculty about what it's like to be a student in the school and what we need from you to help us be successful. And those things are going to continue. So I think that's the reason. We're giving students a voice.
I think that's just huge, and I just wanted to call that out and commend it. And finally, Eric, I'm not neglecting you. I just, first of all, want to say that you've been incredibly thoughtful and responsive with this whole horrible issue of security, and I just want to compliment you on that. And so the only question that I have for you is there also, now I've just blanked on the medicine, the if you overdose. Yes, thank you. Do we have that? Do we have training in that? Is that available?
You mean the Narcan?
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
yes. We have that in our high schools, and we are working with our medical advisors and with the state. The state is developing protocols for that also in middle schools and so forth. But yes, we are. Grace Johnson, who's our nurse supervisor, works very closely with the state on that.
Thank you. These are all questions we don't actually want to talk about, but thank you all.
Thank you. I've got a bunch of miscellaneous notes all over the place here. First of all, Dr. Andy Morrow, shout out to you. Thank you. You heard our comments from just the other day and included them in this report. Thank you. Dr. Morrow listens, I tell you what. Yeah, and you're right, I do know you from back when you were a principal, and I think I have that insight. I think everybody here has heard my story about how you personally assisted when my son had an issue, and thank you again for doing that. Just a great example of how a principal can really affect the life of an individual child and make their experience at school better, so appreciate that. Hey, Andy, and I was curious, I think it was just a year ago, but maybe more, because they kind of go together sometimes. But we just went through prom season, and there was a time you came out and showed us the passive sniffers. Did we use them again? How'd it go?
We did use them again. This is actually our second year that we've been using them, and the feedback has been spectacular from all of our staff. The initial concerns, I think, that everyone had of, how is this going to work? Are we going to get pushback? It's now, why haven't we been doing this forever? But I can say that we had no instances of students drinking before the prom or during the prom. And we made sure we can be safe, that kids are arriving safe and that kids are leaving safe, which is really our goal with that.
That's great. Good to hear. And Eric and Andy, I'm curious as well. I had a chance to chat with a Hartford firefighter recently, and we're thinking how the police department has access to our buildings to familiarize themselves with the buildings. Does our fire department have similar access?
As a result of the training that we just did with the the West Hartford Police Department for the active shooter training. That was one of the issues that came up, and that's something that we were going to provide for the engine companies working with the new fire chief, as well as giving them camera access. They requested it through their iPads as well, so don't have a problem with that at all, since they've been training with the police department as well to come into the hot zone. It's sort of a new thing during a crisis situation where they can provide valuable medical care. They're receiving training to go in once a perimeter has been established inside the school and it's somewhat secure. So yes, it's something. They also have keys and access through the Knox boxes, which are at the school as well. So those are located in all the schools, especially after hours. If they have to get in for an alarm or a leak or something that's going on, that they do have access as well and physical keys at all the schools that they can get in.
That's great, thank you. And Jamal, thank you again. The other day you gave us insight into some of the duties that an assistant principal has that we weren't all aware of, and you answered one of my questions that I had here, which I really appreciate. When you talked about the 3 APs will get together and calibrate. I use the term level set. I like calibrate even better. And then you do that with the principal. Great to hear. I'm curious then, because we see the reports from and statistics from the different schools, do the assistant principals from the two high schools get together and calibrate?
Yes, we do, quite often. I can't tell you how many times I've called Shelley and said, hey, I got this, what do you think? And vice versa. And we all talk crosstown. Like there is no rivalry. Like we need each other and we rely on each other and our open communication, and we're a close group. All 6 of us are close and we talk constantly, online, offline, in each other's offices, because we understand that this idea of it taking a village, we hold that to be true. And I think that we can't profess to do right by all kids if we're not on the same page.
I was going to say, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say
We
that.
also, Andy.
Go ahead, Shelley, you got it.
Andy has set up monthly meetings for both sides of towns to get together. And he always poses, what topics do you want us to have a conversation? He's provided through Eric, a lot of training that they just talked about specific to us and how we would handle situations. So calibrate is the right word. Sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to say that we meet separately. We shoot for about every month or every 6 weeks at a high school group, and I also meet separately with the middle school assistant principals across town as well, so that we make sure that we're sharing ideas and any issues that one school's seeing, another school's aware of and may be able to help with as well.
Oh, it sounds a little bit like Eric's tabletop exercises.
We do those as well. Eric comes in, we share different scenarios and walk through what the police response would be, walk through what their response would be as leaders in their building.
Great. And I think one other comment, and Rosina, kind of hope to see Rosina in her new expanded role, possibly as part of this presentation in the future. I also, the disparity in the report regarding racial instances perhaps is something that someone else's point of view and outside, another set of eyes could assist and only make us better. So I certainly look forward to that. Thank you all so much.
Thank you as well. I have a two-part question. The first question is piggybacking off of, and I appreciate how you share communication, resources, ideas, things of that sort, certainly on the high school level. Looking at the chart here, and I can't help but to notice how high the number is in terms of fighting and altercations at one of our middle schools. And so instead of asking the question of why is that so high, I'm more so going to ask the question of those schools where their numbers are lower, are they sharing their ideas of how that is so?
They are, and it's difficult, I think, sometimes when we look at data that may or may not spike in certain areas for certain years. And I will share, and I know Tom has shared with you as well, that it's been a very difficult year for Sedgwick. And I will go so far as to say that when I sit down with Andrew and his assistant principals, as we do, and we look through the data, because again, we review this data on first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, we review this data consistently. Sedgwick's data looked very different for the first 2 quarters of the school year. And they really have had a rough second semester with all that's gone on there. And so I'm not saying that as an explanation, it's difficult sometimes in that. But yes, we have been making sure that they have the supports in place, that they have the supports of their colleagues from the different schools, and really make sure that they understand what they're doing and how they can best help students.
And just to piggyback, we've had extra counselors still at Sedgwick up to this week with different groups of kids. I mean, this has been an intensely difficult year for all of Sedgwick, and Andrew Clapsaddle's done a really good job keeping people together, but that's where you'll see a spike after a year like this.
Thank you, and that touches on my second question, which is, the first question was more so from the student perspective. My second question is more from the adult perspective. And with you talking about numbers and numbers decreasing and things that are working to change our student population and their mindsets, and I like how you talked about their soul. My question is with you. Have you observed within yourself, or not putting you on the spot, but just your colleagues, a change over the years? How have the students helped you or hurt you or had you to grow? And I ask that because you are working with our young people, and it's important for you to be in a good place in doing so as well. So please answer to however you're comfortable in doing so.
I can speak for myself. As a teacher, I always felt that I can impact as many kids as would come in and out of my classroom and the kids that I coached, and that I could reach them on a level because I was always seeing them try and work, and I always propped them up in that way. And very rarely would I experience the level of ineffectiveness in the way that they conduct themselves over the course of a year. When I became an assistant principal, I really had to think about what purpose am I serving with what I'm going to ask this kid to do as far as a consequence. How am I going to address this student given what I know to be right and what I feel like I can provide for a student in order to help them to see the best side of themselves and that this was just a mistake. And the way that I've changed really has been my philosophy on all kids, and it's that there's always a backstory. There's always something deeper. It's my job to figure out how either I can get to that point, and that may mean me taking a step back and not making it about me. It's really important when a kid is yelling at you and when a kid is calling you everything but child of God and is telling you, where you can take your detention, and really say, hey, don't take it personally, Jamal. They're coming from a place of pain, whether it's pain that is temporary or whether it is deep-seated pain that they need some sort of resource for or help with. I had to change. I had to change the way I viewed student misbehavior. It's not about me. It's about the student, and it's about how I can serve. You can't lead if you can't serve effectively. And that's my philosophy. So how am I going to serve this kid? Because that's what a true leader does.
I could top that. But I have to say, I've been doing things a long time, and so taking being personal out of it, it's a lot easier for me to be objective and to help see where the problem stems from and how to help them. And the fact that the kids come back and let us know that we've made a difference helps me. So if I make one child a better person in their life, then I know that I've done my job, and it keeps me going for many years, as Tom pointed out. Thank you very much. I still have parents of students that are in their 30s email me at the beginning of every school year to let me know how their children are doing, and still to thank me way back when. So those kinds of things, kids coming back and not forgetting you, I think helps us realize that we do make a difference every day. And it keeps me going for the many years that I've been doing it. So, and I love it still, even though it's tough many a day. You make a difference, and that's what's so important.
Thank you for asking that question, Lorna. That's a powerful question, and I would reiterate, it's funny because I was thinking about, as we've all been saying goodbye to Chip and getting him ready to exit and all of that, and trying to understand what he's been doing for the last untold years, and knowing full well that we're never going to be able to create that spreadsheet and all of those things. Chip was the first person that called me when I was selected for this job. He called me at Bristow to congratulate me, and we had a little talk, and then he said, congratulations also, it may be the worst job in the district. Because he said, you get to see people at their worst. And he's right about some of that, and you know, you've been into hearings, and we sometimes I do get to see parents and students at their worst, and teachers at their worst. But I also get to work with great people. And I can tell you that the work that the assistant principals do, the work that our principals do on a daily basis to connect with kids, to make sure that every kid knows that they're not forgotten, is spectacular, and just an honor to work with these people every day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
So I was a little late today. I was at the cross-country, or not cross-country, track dinner for the girls. And I tell you that because, you know, as a parent, Board of Ed member, you wear a few hats. You're participating in sports events outside of school. You attend graduations, joyous events, celebrations. We hear the accolades, right? And you know, even in the sporting events, you find this love that the kids have for each other, right? And that goes for all 3 seasons, and it doesn't matter what sport. They really do get along. And then you go to a hearing policy, you go to a expulsion hearing, right? And I think I could speak for everyone here, or the ones that attended at least, is like, it almost was like a punch in the gut, because we don't see that. And I talked about it that day, about how I wanted to immerse myself into that situation so that I knew more. And it was like a punch in the gut, because you see all these, you know, the shining star, but you don't see that piece of it, and these human beings that we teach, and you know, Jamal and Shelley, and the work that you do. It may go unnoticed until a day like today, right? If you're not you don't have a child that's possibly in trouble or something, you kind of maybe just ignore it. And you know, I just want to thank you for everything that you do and how you impact the kids. Because it's important. You know, you could walk through your 13 years of school here and never know about these discipline issues, right? And everything is perfect and such. But that's not the case. You know, we saw an expulsion hearing. It was I thought pretty, you know, it was a difficult thing for me to look at. And I'm segueing to that piece because, you know, if you haven't seen it, you know, Jamal spoke on it a little earlier, is that we know more, or you guys know more about the students than they know, and that he can pull up a report, in some cases 6 pages long, of incidences of what happened to said student. And, you know, we do, and we're known for being such a great program here, and we've added resources on the mental health side, and the support there. And we talked about it the other day, about what happens to said student after they leave. Does it follow them to college? Does this rap sheet follow them to college? And no, the answer is no. And I was thinking, and it didn't dawn on me the other day, but it dawned on me here, how sad that it doesn't follow. And I'll tell you why. Because their whiteboard, if you will, is race clean. And in some cases, that's fantastic, right? But then you have lost all that information that possibly could help that student or that person further down the line. And I don't know how that information gets transferred. I'm not that guy, but there's a lot of smart people out there that I know there's privacy and all that, but all that hard work you do, all that counseling that you do gets erased the minute they graduate. And that student has an opportunity to spread their wings and flourish, but also can be left empty and without resources. And, we hear the news all too often of things going on all across the country, and I'm wondering, and we're not going to solve the issue here today, but I'm wondering if somehow that information, however it looks, can be transferred somehow so that continued resources can be allowed, and I know that there's a lot of privacy issues there, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to think of this, but it just seems sad that all that work that you guys do just goes boom, done. Not that it doesn't go unnoticed to this child. I don't want to disparage that. It's the piece that doesn't get transferred to that next mentor. It's that however that mentor looks, because it may not be the parents in the home. We know that sometimes, right? It may not be the parents. And I don't know. I have another.
Sometimes it does. Sometimes we are able to have those postgraduate conversations with families, with schools, with programs. But I would also argue that I don't think it's an all or nothing. I think that you see if we've done our job well, if we've built those relationships with students, if we've provided those resources that they may have been lacking during their school year, if they've been able to, or during their time at Hall or Conard, if they've been able to really actualize that, then I think we see the results in the person that they are, and that they're not all going out there empty. They're going out there hopefully filled with the understanding and the successes that they've had interacting with the administration, interacting with their teachers. And so I think that's an important piece of that.
Yeah, no doubt. And I tried to segue that piece in there. I didn't want that to go unnoticed, that of course that's the case, right? And it's not an all or nothing. It's just that I'm sure there's still people, they graduate and then they don't have a Shelley or Jamal to talk to, or an administrator or a teacher. That's all. It's because the yeoman's work that you guys do, that's all I'm trying to get at. The second piece of that is, you talked about disciplinary action and introducing them to clubs. Last week, we talked about the athletic policy, or the new policy in place, that we probably take things away from people that do things. So my argument that day is fair and balanced for everyone. So when we look at that, it's a great program, right? And it may help, but we have to look at that holistically, because when we remove things from certain people for certain actions and then give people certain things for certain actions, it's a double standard, and I want to try to avoid that.
Okay, well, that comes to me. Pretty much what I was going to say has been said, so I don't want to repeat anything. But what I do want to do is truly commend you as the panel that's sitting in front of us in terms of recognizing so many things and making great inroads. Because I, like Tom, many, many years ago, it didn't look like this, especially with the black and brown children and perhaps some of the other children who didn't quite fit in. And so I'm really happy to hear that you recognize a number of these issues and you're addressing them, and I'm especially happy to hear that you are looking at the student as a whole in terms of creating relationships with the student, with the teachers, and especially the families, the parents and the guardians. I also would like to know, though, especially with those children or students in terms of being suspended, and I heard you talk about the frequent flyers. I was going to say the repeat offenders, but that's not a sensitive word to use. But how is the relationship in terms of parents or guardians ongoing so that that's not repeated, and that the discipline, if you will, is reinforced at home. Just as you mentioned, you have them call. I love that, because that's what happened back in the day, right? You call the parent, and that's all it takes for that child to be, scared out of their wit. So just help me understand. I'm sure we're implementing that, but just help me understand that.
I think that it's unique as to every parent. I think there are parents that are right on board with us and see what we're doing to be exactly what's needed, and they support us 100%. Then there are parents who don't necessarily feel that what we're doing is the right thing for their child, or helping us help the child realize that they're responsible. So then it's incumbent upon us to bring that parent in, to communicate with the parent, to have everybody together, sit around, and what can we do together to help change behavior.
I think one of the things, and Jamal, I'll let you go, one of the things that I've seen shift, honestly, is parents are open to the discussion. They want to help their kid. They're less okay with the consequence than they used to be. There's no, I mean, that's the thing, that everything's good until, and then there's going to be the consequence. There's resistance then.
I think there's a third parent too, the parent who initially pushes back on what we do. We continue to chop wood and carry water with the parent, with the child. Then the kid starts to act out at home. The parent starts to see what we see on a regular basis at school, and then they're like, okay, what are we going to do together? And it's at that point where, once again, we're like, all right, these are the things that we have been doing. Now you understand why we're incorporating this particular strategy or this particular support. And it's at that point, I have a few on my caseload now where that was the case, where I had to just be very vigilant. I had to almost be stubborn in my resolve and not quitting on the family. And that sometimes is very difficult. And it's frustrating because you work so hard during the day to help support a child, and then sometimes when they go home it gets undone, and then you come back and you got to do it all over again. And so those things are frustrating. But when you start to make inroads and the parent starts to sort of come around and you really do forge an authentic partnership, it's wonderful, and it benefits all parties involved. So, I think it's important, and Shelley will speak to it. We're so dedicated to the process for each of those frequent flyers that we would be remiss if we didn't see it through.
I think it's also important that it ties into the work that we're doing and that Rosina's been doing with her team on welcoming schools. The idea that, it's easy for us to look at school as a comfortable place. We all became teachers. You all became Board of Ed members because you found success in school for the most part, and you liked it. It's important sometimes when we're working with parents to realize that they may not have that same experience when they were in school. School may not have been a place they found success or found comfort in or felt like they were encouraged and supported. And so sometimes when we talk about it being an issue of trust with a student, it's also an issue of trust with that family, and how do we build those connections and really understand their background and where they're coming from as well.
The other question I have is around the training, the workshops that are provided for your teaching staff. My question is, two questions actually, because I know this happens at our workplace. If for some reason the teachers were not present that day that workshop was offered, do they have an opportunity, one, to make it up? And then the second part of that question, are any of these trainings or learning tools ever offered online through webinars where they can take it at their own leisure?
We usually do it during our CSI time, where it's, mandated professional development. So if they're not present, then we do have everything through PowerPoints or Google Classroom so that they can access it. We also provided every staff member at Hall with the book by Zaretta Hammond, and there's almost homework. And that's part of the dialogue that goes on. And the teachers run it for fellow teachers, which is much more inviting to teachers rather than administrators talking at them. It's fellow teachers sharing with them and talking about that. I also, if I may, one of the things I think that reduced expulsions in both Conard and Hall have it now, we've had it for 9 years, is Link Crew. We bring, and I was remiss in not bringing that up before, it's fellow students welcoming incoming ninth graders before they even enter the building. We start with our day in a life, which we just had 2 weeks ago, and it's the first introduction, and our Link Crew leaders are the tour guides. They present to the kids in small groups, and then the juniors and seniors have to fill out an application and are selected, and they spend 2 days in their summer before school even starts to come in and get trained, right, Megan? And then they are assigned specific groups of students, and they contact them before school even starts. Their first day at school is not about academics. It's about welcome to Hall High School, welcome to Conard High School. Let's have a great day. Let's show you where things are. Let's play some games. Let's get you excited about coming to high school.
Conard's kickoff for Link Crew is tomorrow.
So, yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of work behind the scenes to make kids feel comfortable and part of school before they even walk in the door. And we do that for transfer students as well.
Thank you. My daughters are part of Link Crew, so kudos. So I have a couple more questions for Andy and Eric. So first off, I want to say thank you for allowing me to be part of that drill at KP. It was very powerful. But just with all the things that are in the news, and it's so unfortunate that we have to be talking about this in terms of our educational district to ever, 20 years ago, who would ever think that we'd be talking about these things as we're sending our children to school? And so my question is, we know that we have many students that are savvy and sophisticated, and I'm certainly not saying that it happens in our district. However, if there was a threat or potential threat, let's say inside of the school, and I know, Eric, you mentioned that you have, what did you call them? Not stations, but you called them some, or hot zones, but when you're using your radios or phones or whatever, you can isolate the channel. There it is. So if you have a potential threat inside of the school and those students know the drill because they participated in that, how, keeping in mind that the information could be sensitive, so share, what you wish, but how would that be addressed and keeping the majority or all of the population as safe as possible, with the exception of maybe a student or more than one student who could be a potential threat inside of the school? Do you understand my question?
It's quite the question. But, if you're referring to an internal threat or something that originates inside, maybe student-based or whatever, it's one of the things we reiterate with our teachers and staff is, knowing where you are, recognizing danger, being able to identify. Nobody knows the building better than the people that work in it every day. Our guards know the buildings inside and out when they do their fire drills and lockdown drills. I know particularly in the high schools, they have it broken down by zones or color-coded zones. So they call those zones out when they're clearing them. We had to do it for an incident at Conard this year where they go through and they know, okay, yellow zone clear, blue zone clear as well. In addition, as we talked about in previous meetings, our law enforcement have access to our camera system. They have maps, and our IT department actually put our camera systems on top of the maps so they could actually look at the school blueprint, and then they could push a button right on the iPad and go directly to where that zone is within the school. It's pretty amazing technology.
Had another question. In fact, I was asking a student at my church. Let's just happen to say, because depending on what level, right? But let's just say a student, stepped out and had used the restroom, and now there's a threatening situation. Does that student, and I'm going to say yes, because I know that we're on top of our drills, would know what to do in an instant situation? Like what's...
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I'm a big advocate of having students help us. Our job is to prepare and not to scare them, so get them to come out and, I think, Dave, you've been to the drills where we grab a sampling, 5 or 6 different kids to help out at every one of the drills. And we want them to think on their feet that if they, teachers are trained to lock their classrooms in a rapid manner, so there's a good, strong likelihood that a child could get locked out. And teachers also trained not to open the door if a student knocks. So we want them to think, where can I go? Where's the safe spot? Into the bathroom. Worst case scenario, exit the school if that's your only option. And sometimes they can't think like that. Is it okay for a boy to go in the girls' room or vice, and to go places they're not normally allowed to do? So that's why, and then we encourage those students that help us to tell their friends and be advocates for us, and to tell your friends what you went through today. And that's always, an issue that does happen. It's amazing that, I hate to say it, but the kids think better than the adults sometimes, because they really can think on their feet. And when we do our fire drills and we block and exit, the kids are the ones that know the run to the next exit and where to go. The teachers are the one that have the hardest time. They're like, well, this is where I always go out.
Will argue
Yeah,
with us.
but
No!
the student's already out the next door and outside the building. So yeah, so we're always constantly trying to to look at those situations, because there's never like a perfect scenario.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so number 2 looks like building cultural competence in the West Hartford Public Schools. And the background will be Dr. Rosina Haskins will report.
Well, good evening. I am happy to have the floor tonight to share some reflections of our district's equity, diversity, and inclusion work of this past year and some of our future planning. So I'm presenting this evening alone by myself, just on behalf of a large body of change agents who are doing incredible work, Shelly and Jamal included. You're right, Cheryl, they are fascinating to watch in action, and it is a privilege for me to work with them and all of the EDC members. I did want their voices, the EDC members' voices, to be heard this evening. I think the Safe School Climate presentation was a good segue into this presentation. So I reached out to EDC members and I said, what's most crucial for board members and the public to hear about our work, our most important work from this year, challenging obstacles that we've faced, and what lies ahead? And their response resulted in, I kid you not, a 200-page report, which I was able to condense into 7 pages, I think. And that was a non-negotiable at that point in cutting anything else. But we have put together an agenda that frames what we believe is important for you to know, to be informed of our work, the work we've done this year, our plans ahead, and how we're charting this course. And then, so not only so you can be informed, but so that you can support our work and hold us accountable in measuring our progress and meeting our goals. So as a little background, we subscribe to this definition for cultural competence, and it originates in the medical field in the 1970s, where practitioners wanted ways to be able to interact with people from different cultures and backgrounds, wanted to be able to understand them so that they could access their services too, and they can treat them. So doctors, they see themselves as lifesavers, they save lives, and we see ourselves as improving lives and increasing life chances for our students and our families. So this is a framework which we ground the work that we're doing. And there are 3 tenets to that framework: cultural consciousness, and it really is our way of understanding and recognizing that we all have biases, and understanding privilege and power and prejudice and marginalization, and then translating those theories, that concept, into our practice and being more responsive with people and families across cultures, backgrounds, situations. And ultimately, being a cultural advocate, not because that's what you're striving to be and you're one day I'm going to be that social justice advocate, but that's just naturally what happens when you start to really, really engage in this work on deeper and deeper levels. We look at this as this motto kind of, or this graphic image depicts our approach to uplifting community, building community in a recursive way. And so you get to a point where when you're so grounded in this work, you can't unsee the things that just aren't right. And you feel compelled to take action. And so we go back to this motto, and we live in this motto and this framework, and it really does drive and guide everything that we do. So I want to touch on some of our progress from this year. And, you have it more in detail in a detailed report. But we know that teacher diversity, our lack of teacher diversity, it isn't unique to West Hartford, but we're just not waiting for state and national changes in certification and higher education. We're taking action now. And so, we have provided a path for our students students of color who aspire to be educators, future educators of diversity, to form a connection with our local colleges. Our students know, Gus and Megan, that West Hartford is a great place to live and to learn. So we're trying to inspire our students to recognize how it is also a great place to work and grow as a professional. And so we have this partnership, and so we're just not waiting. We're trying to get ahead of it. One of our points of pride is our diverse text. So most of us have a childhood favorite book. Mine was Snowy Days by Ezra Keats, and Where the Wild Things Are. Cheryl, you're smiling. Those came out in the same year, and it was also a favorite of my son's. So when one school asked its staff to bring their favorite childhood books to school to inspire a mural in the hallway of popular children's literature, the principal had to pause because the reality was that all of the books, all of the characters, and all of the books that the staff brought, they all looked alike. It didn't reflect diversity at all. And so this year, an effort led by Carrie Jones and Ashley Callan and the curriculum specialists and library media specialists, they brought together teachers and asked teachers to bring their collection of literature, classroom literature and textbooks, and they walked through a protocol to examine those books for diversity and bias as well. And that professional collaboration and learning experience resulted in a diverse textbook fair, which was supported by some funding, and it allowed teachers to go and take a walk through all of the literature that we were able to get at various basal reading levels and select books that reflected their classrooms, their schools, for their classroom library. So, we're excited about that. We don't want to become complacent, though, because we recognize that our culture is changing, and as our culture changes, so must we. I do want to let me read just something that this work has influenced many people. We have some behind-the-scenes EDC wizards. One library media specialist wrote to Scholastic Books recently. She says, "Hi, Scholastic. I noticed today, while trying to find a good book match for a student, the only books on my book fair with African-American characters on the cover are Stars Beneath My Feet and the two Jason Reynolds books, which are both hard covers, which reads expensive." And she said, "No Latinx characters. Oh, there are two, Muslim girls in one book. But what message does this send to our kids of color when the vast majority of our books lack diversity? We have spent a lot of time this year trying to make our collections reflect our student population, but they're not represented on the fair. I wonder if this is something Scholastic could do better." And they wrote back, the rep wrote back and talked about how Scholastic's diverse texts show average 48% diverse text above the industry average of 15%. And she also acknowledged that the industry as a whole needs to improve what that average is. And then a day later, the library media specialist reported to me, "They brought me lots of diverse titles, hand-delivered. I will encourage my department to be more clear with Scholastic ahead of time next year. And so that's an example of the influence that this work is having. We are so happy to be partnered with the West Hartford African American Social and Cultural Organization. You know, they have given us some feedback just based on their children's experiences, their grandchildren's experiences on our treatment of African American history. And, you know, our history doesn't begin in chains. It doesn't end with civil rights or with Obama. And so it's just much more richer and deeper, and we want to work with them, and we have been working with them. We had a meeting just today on an action plan and steps going forward, and how do we, you know, why do we recognize Black History Month? And how can we honor African American history in ways that it's not just about oppression, but there's dignity to that as well. And so, an agency, giving it agency. So we're excited about this work with this partnership. I often say that this work, and it's big, it's deep, it's challenging, and it's rewarding, but it does require a level of intestinal fortitude. You just have to have that, you just have to have the stomach to withstand, you know, sometimes the pain and adversity, to withstand sometimes the criticism that we're not doing enough, or it's not moving at lightning speed. And so we're trying to be less defensive and finding ways to be more responsive and to listen, to really, really listen, and increase awareness. So rather than one of the suggestions from the EDC members when I had to cut their 200-page report was, what then we need to do, give more installments of presentations about our work, so that we're not trying to just put it into an end-of-the-year equity and excellence report. And then you've heard us talk about the Welcoming Schools assessment last month. And one of the things that we didn't add at that time was that we are so in front of this work on family engagement. The state has we did say that the state has a new definition of family engagement, and we've been a part of that. They've invited us to the table because of what we're doing, but they've come back to invite us to be a part of Guiding Partnership Schools. And it's a pilot which the state is developing. It's kind of an online platform to be a hub for schools to be able to have tools and resources that help with family engagement. And so they've invited us to be a part of that. With that, the benefits, we have teacher stipends, some funds that will help for professional development and family engagement activities, and then we'll be the first to have access to all of those resources. So we recognize that the work is challenging, and it is really hard to see. It's really hard to see clear paths, you know, trying to do this work, clearing paths by seeing the forest through the trees. And we don't want to just bask in our glows. We know that we have lots of grows too. But we do want to honor the work that we have, but we want to be transparent and honest about the work that's ahead. And so while we realize that, you know, we've come a long way, there's still plenty to do. We want, despite all of our work, we still struggle, and you pointed that out to Dave earlier, there are just still predictable disparities among groups, racial, ethnic, mandated special education groups, and we have to do better, and we have to keep finding ways to do better and eliminate those barriers that create those inequities and disparities. We are working really hard to develop our curriculum that's culturally relevant and responsive. You heard Shelley talk about Zaretta Hammond and the brain, culturally responsive teaching in the brain. That was something that really looks at, deals a little bit with trauma too, deals a little bit with cultures that may be collective, that may have more of a collective view on life and achievement, versus an individual, competitive, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and just understanding that it challenges us and encourages us to really tap into our families as funds of knowledge. We've got some great examples of how that's happened, just really authentically too, not contrived. And obviously we're really working to be more welcoming and inclusive in our schools. Newcomers who speak different languages, students who come from different towns, and also, we have our students in the Open Choice Program who they come here and they make tremendous sacrifices to enrich our school district. And so, those are things that we're paying really careful attention to and building diversity. We know that, we believe strongly that it is important for our students to see themselves and their histories and their narratives and their backgrounds in the context of teaching and learning. And so that's why the curriculum and the teaching pedagogy, that's really important. But it's also really important for them to see reflections of themselves in the front of the classroom. So we do have a plan. Last month, and our plan, building capacity, training and learning more and engaging in, research-based literature and practice. So our plan was started, actually, we're always in this planning mode. But we said, let's do a better job with my role changing. Maybe I can do a better job with taking stock of how we're doing and how this work that we're doing is influencing student achievement, closing gaps. And so we did a needs assessment, a professional development, cultural competency needs assessment. We had over 670 staff responses. In April, we were respectful about it. We gave the teachers the time to take it during an early release Wednesday professional development, so they can be really thoughtful about why they were taking it. We really need to know where they are and what they felt they needed. And for some, they're not sure what they need. They don't know what they don't know, and so we consider that too. So we've been analyzing the results and creating a professional development plan. We found that through that needs assessment and looking at the comments that the teachers gave us and shared, we have a lot of in-house expertise and knowledge that we need to tap into. And so we plan to do that, and we plan to use the election day, November 5th, the November 5th PD as a cultural competency conference. And we're going to design it as such where there's choice workshops based on the needs assessment results, what our educators said they needed to know more of high priority areas. And then there's racial justice component that we said everyone needs to have. We need to give everybody that assured experience of racial justice. We'll do that as a large group, but it's not a one-shot or one-day booster. This will carry through. This work will carry through with an intentional plan and strategy throughout the year. And again, it is a long-term commitment. And we're always going to live in it, we're always going to change, we're always going to continue to evolve. So these are our intended outcomes. We want to reduce those predictable and unpredictable disparities that we see, and participation in extracurricular clubs. We focused a lot this year on enhancing the diversity of our music groups. And we decided, one of the things that resonated with me in meeting with a scholar and a musician and a parent here in this district is that music is a common element it's a universal element that we all share. We may have different genres that we like, but I think we all probably listen to some kind of music in the last 24 hours, even those who just listen to podcasts and news shows, but you probably heard a jingle that you knew all too well, and it caught your attention. And so that's something we all share, and we thought, well, why aren't we tapping into more kids and building their talents and exposing them to music? But it can't just be a problem or a task or chore that rests with just the music department. It's got to be all hands on deck. And so we've really been focused on that this year and showing teachers, modeling teachers, for teachers, science teachers, math teachers, ways in which they can engage students through music, but also families through music too. We'll continue to do our recruitment, diversity, recruitment of our certified teaching staff, not compromising, high quality. We're pleased to say that we did get a grant. Rick and I applied for a grant to support the future educators of diversity and to support our recruitment efforts. And so we're actually going to be honored for it and recognized for it at an upcoming symposium on recruiting, minority recruiting. We want to continue to see evidence of our families feeling welcome, not just, what it looks like or what we think it feels or what it might be, but we want to have some empirical evidence of that. We're getting some of that through the Welcoming Schools assessment, but there are other measures and dipsticks that we can take. And we really want to be bold disruptors of systemic racism. And we really want to create systemic equity. This year, we spent a lot of time from the beginning of the school year with our admin retreat. We took a candid look at ourselves. It's so hard, I think, to have conversations about inequities and race and racism and privilege and power and things like that, marginalization. It's so hard because sometimes you might feel like you're blaming someone, or you feel blamed, or you feel shamed. And so we took a step back and we said, you know what, let's be transparent with each other. Let's first establish a safe forum so that we can have this conversation, and let's take a look around and let's identify the inequities that we see within our own organization, within our own schools. And we did that as an admin extended leadership team, very honestly, very transparently, but we used a protocol for that. What's the history, the origin? Who is it hurting? Why does it exist? What is keeping you up at night? And they were pretty common trends. Like for me, one of the inequities that just frustrates me is open choice transportation. On a beautiful sunny day following a snowstorm that closed all schools, an open choice student of ours, a Hartford student who comes here to West Hartford, might not be able to go to school, might not be able to come here because of the parking ban in Hartford if he or she doesn't have their own transportation. That's just not right. And so I found myself complaining about it and whining about it. And I don't know, there's a lot that I can do when you're working across other agencies, but we said, no, we got to be able to do something. So we've been talking about flipped classrooms and blended learning platforms so they don't have to miss out, because it's just not right. So that's just an example of how we've looked to identify, systemic inequities, and we're looking to address them, but collectively. And that's that new motto that we have, is building communities and lifting each other up. And so we have one vision, and that's the clear paths in any way that we can and have to. So I open the floor for questions, but first I do want to give a quick EDC infomercial that you're all invited to come to our end of the year EDC reflection celebration on the balcony. It is going to be fantastic. You can learn more about our work, give us some feedback in terms of setting our goals for next year. We have the RSVP form. Ask for your music requests so that we can add it to the playlist. There's a lot of Motown. I asked for Don't You Worry About a Thing by Stevie Wonder, because I pulled up to Webster Hill on the first day of school. And the kids were out gathered, and you see a little nervousness, and I knew that my car battery was going to die immediately when I stopped. So I said, you gotta make sure you're ready to stop here, because your battery's gonna die. You're gonna have to jump start it yourself, which I was prepared to do. But as I walked up to the school, that song was playing, Don't You Worry About a Thing. And I'm like, it's all good. It's all good. This child's going to be just fine. And they're going to have a good day. And my car's going to be fine. I'm going to have a good year. And it has been a great year. Questions?
I'm just going to say, we got to talk about your pay, and we got to get Tom to get you a battery for your car, so.
Oh.
No. Yes. Actually, a couple things is, when you first came into this position, Tom Tom was your biggest cheerleader, if you will. And it has been nothing but a success for this town and everything that you do. In fact, I looked at Tom in the beginning of the meeting, and I don't know, he probably had a little scowl on his face. He might have had a tough day, and I've seen that before with him. But when you were talking, he lit up a little bit. I don't know why I'm his cheerleader. I don't know why I'm doing that, but it just goes to show the kind of work you do. I almost don't need this report because I know, and the confidence that I have in you and your group is that, and I say that tongue in cheek because everything in here and everything that you do, this continuous improvement, your path, it's an honor to have you here in our school system. And in fact, you may not know this, but I was in an interview about a month ago and your name came up out of my, I was talking about the good things you do here on some of this and the future educators of diversity. So,
A job interview?
yeah.
I hope you got it.
No, once I mentioned your name, they said, that's it. No, it was a pleasure to mention your name, and I talked about all the hard work you do with that, and so it's just I'm just here giving you praise, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
I just want to first of all echo Mark entirely, and also highlight some things that you didn't talk about that I think are also really important in what you do. We are all concerned about things like racial gaps and inequity, but the other issue, at least that we're concerned about, or at least that I'm concerned about, I should speak for myself, is the importance of educating majority students about these situations, and the importance of taking this diverse material and integrating it into a full curriculum as opposed to an add-on. Oh, it's Martin Luther King Day, let's talk about black people or whatever. And so a lot of districts I know have been trying to do various sorts of diversity work, and I commend everybody for it. I think it's really important, but one thing that you guys also do is make sure that all students understand these issues, not just that black students see black faces as teachers, but that white students see black teachers, et cetera, right? And that people understand that black people, Latinx people, Native Americans have all contributed to our history and our culture, not just reassuring, oh, we have a black child in class, and so we're going to say something. So I think that fuller integration of the material and the importance of educating everybody about this instead of these add-ons is really, really crucial, and you didn't mention that, but I just wanted to call that out because that's what makes the difference, not just the add-ons. Having said that, I have a suggestion and a question. I know that you brought in Eric Gom, who's a specialist in music, to talk about musical diversity. I've been asked in to talk about African American stuff. I hope that you can use experts in the various fields who are in town or nearby in universities or whatever, as you're doing this work, to take advantage of expertise, because lots of people are there happy to engage and make their own work more relevant and important than just some book that nobody's going to read. So that's the comment. I'm glad you started, and I hope you continue that. And my only question is, now that the budget is passed, I don't know how you do all this work yourself, but I just wonder, in a wonderful world, what can we do to support you and give you more support, either personnel support or whatever, in order to do these things? Because you can't keep carrying this entire weight yourself.
So, thank you, Cheryl. I am not doing this work alone, as you know. There's a lot of people doing the heavy lifting too, and they're not getting anything extra for it. They don't do it for expectation of accolades. It really is what they feel is right to do. In terms of budget and financing, we want to be equity informed in how we spend our money. So that's something that we'll take a closer look at. But you have supported me by this role, making it a priority and a focus. I think, Tom has heard plenty of times, well, if it's that important, why isn't it a full-time role? And I think, he's struggled with not wanting to ask me to pick a role, because mandated adult, ESL adult, citizenship, the continuing ed, that side of things, that remains dear to me. But, he's also said, you still have the opportunity to have that connection and do a lot of community outreach. We are tapping into lots of local experts. We have, part of our plan, actually, for our professional development is to bring in, when we do these workshops, to bring in our local partners like NCCJ. So we have partnerships with a lot of these people, and sometimes the way that we get around the cost of it is we'll say, well, we don't know a whole lot about you, or we haven't seen, and you don't know a whole lot about us, so why don't we invite you in to maybe give a workshop, which is what we did with Eric Gom in front of our PLEC, Professional Learning and Evaluation Committee. And so they kind of vet these, before we bring them all in. We did the same thing with the racial justice training when we brought them into just Whiting Lane, and it was very controlled and structured in the way that we wanted to just not give it away, because not everybody knows us the way that we do. But just today, we met with the State Department of Education Resource Center, and they want to be a part of this work. And they're the organizers of the Dismantling Systemic Racism Conference. They were in our office in the superintendent's conference room today, meeting with us, wanting to support our work and willing to negotiate on costs.
Thank you. Kudos, thank you, appreciate your work. The way the Board of Ed works, we only have one employee, that's Tom, so you actually work for Tom.
I know.
I can't ask you to do things, so I'm going to talk to Tom here. And Tom, you can take it or leave it, but you know what I need for Rosina's office, and I want her to have an office first thing, okay? Nice. And a staff at some point. Okay, all right.
Actually.
But I'm out in the community a lot, and I should be out in the schools too.
Yeah.
I do have an office, and I have an exec team, and lots of people who are so good to me and so supportive, and people that I come to work every day, I drive to work every day thinking about how lucky I am to work with. I'll think of individual people that I might not have known otherwise if I wasn't in this role. I would have this narrow, when I was recently in grad school, I had a social justice professor who said, go back to Sedgwick Middle School and look for oppression and inequities. And I'm like, I can't do this assignment. We are great, but now I have a view of the whole playing field. But a lot of that comes from the support of Tom Moore, who's just right out front in this work like no other superintendent I've ever seen.
Yeah. I need you to have like a red button or something that says stop. And let's say budget season, for example. If we've got a list of programs we're going to cut, and if we were to consider something and we need to know that that might affect some of the goals that you talked about tonight, I need you to remind the board about that. That's what I need. I think of a specific program, but it's bigger than the big obvious ones. And that's where I hope Rosina's role you can come to show us. So where we're going straight, I kind of mentioned that with the previous group as well. I hope that you bring a fresh set of eyes, and just another way to look at things is nice. And not that people are doing bad now, but maybe we can do better. And I really feel, that we need to know if there's something we're considering doing, the budget or other things. Just give us a shout out, say, stop, take a look. And
I think it's really interesting you say that, because one of the things that I felt was really important when we elevated Rosina into the position previously and now is that she's a member of the executive team. So that when we're talking about a special education issue, so that when we're talking about a staffing issue, so that when we're talking about a discipline issue, we're talking about all the things that the rest of us have as our prism, that Rosina's there to say, wait a minute, did you think about this? Or let me think of this. And Rosina's an evaluator just like the rest of us are. So I think I'm so glad you say that, because yes, for the board, she serves that role for me too. And my wife often says, if I really want you to listen to me, I'll just have Rosina tell you. Because she's the one person I just can't disagree with for some reason. And just so you know, her office is moving into the office next to, in my suite of offices, the one that's been open there, that's been a smaller conference room, that's going to become her office in her new role.
Very nice, okay. Great, well, thank you, we look forward to it and look forward to seeing great things.
Thank you. A couple of questions. Thank you for your presentation this evening and all the times that you've presented to us. My first question is there a lead in each building for this type of work in each of the school buildings?
So each building has an EDC representative. And we have an EDC representative, and then we also have subcommittee chairs that come from the various buildings, so they act as service liaisons. We have a role description too, that they follow and to support our work. We're thinking about doing some deeper training on equity work with the EDC reps, because we're trying to move a lot of the work back into the buildings, because I think they're ready.
Great. So that leads into my second question, which is, I know that some of the schools have sort of subcommittees of their PTOs, which are equity, diversity, and inclusion councils, groups of parents who are taking on these issues as important to them and trying to move the ball down the field by talking about diverse texts and a welcoming school environment on their own. And I'm wondering what efforts have been made to partner with these councils at the schools that have them, and to maybe bring them together into a more centralized input providing process, if that makes any sense.
So they actually formed because of our work. They were specific parents of there are 4 schools, elementary schools, that have school-based EDI, parent EDIs. And that was inspired by the EDC. We were invited, our EDC meetings are open to the public. And so we opened them to parents. We invited parents to be involved. But it was so early on, it was so early in our infancy, that it was really hard to, in an hour of time each month, or hour and 15 minutes, it was really hard to really be respectful of the parents in the room, because they didn't have the early release Wednesday PD experiences that we want to process and think about. And it just felt like we needed our own space. We didn't, so we said, we really we need you as parents, but maybe there is a platform for you. And so we have parents that come to our EDC meetings that are representatives from the school-based EDI, and it's really gaining traction. It's actually a PLTI project of one of the parents who is an EDC member, has been very involved with our EDC work. I call her an EDC member. She shows up and she keeps us informed. So we will continue that partnership. We just needed to be in a better space and wanted to be respectful of the parents that were coming in, and so we feel good about that.
I think that's really helpful, and I knew some of that information, but I was happy to have you say it out loud so that people watching at home and sitting in the audience can hear it as well, because it's very clear that you're respectful of and seeking family input in these processes. So if other schools wanted to start these councils, should they get in touch with you for guidance on that, or how would they go about doing that?
So we don't have a formal procedure, but we have a template that seems to work. So we have parents who, again, they are frustrated with the speed or just not knowing what we're doing, not feeling that we're doing enough. And so I always invite those parents to come in and talk with me and my EDC co-chairs. So we have this template where I've said to the very first EDI group, I have a parent who wants to be involved. She feels like she's out there doing this work and fighting, and we're not fighting. We're not being divisive. We're building community. So she needs help, and let's invite her. So we have parents who have welcomed newcomers to contact them. I've had I've had conference calls in my office introducing parents to each other. And so that's how that's building. I just got a call from another school the other day that says, oh, a parent is very interested in starting one at that school. Is this right for us? So we want to make sure that we honor the work that those schools have done, the parents have done, the teachers, and keeping the principal involved too. So we're trying to be in sync with each other. That template or motto seems to be working out really well.
Great. And then just finally a comment, and this is in reference to the efforts to recruit more minority teachers. And I'm sure you're aware that the Connecticut General Assembly passed a bill just in the last day or two. I think it went through the second chamber and it's on its way to the governor, that will help us and all the other districts in the state with this. So I'm really excited about that. I know that we're doing everything we can, but this bill will allow for expanded reciprocity across state lines for teacher certification. That could be helpful. And some mortgage assistance for certain minority teachers as well. And I'm just really excited about having the support of our state legislature and state policymakers in helping to sort of turn the ship on this one to get more diverse education staff here in town.
I echo all that has been said. Thank you so much for all that you do. Your role is absolutely invaluable. I will say that with the presentation that was given and certainly hearing the work that's being done to enrich the mindsets of individuals in terms of the rich diversity of our town, but also areas of growth, I am encouraged in also hearing the ability or the willingness to empower the mindsets, the empower to speak out and to speak up. And when you had up there one of your bullet points that read a district reputation of being bold disruptors of racism and creators of systemic equality, that really spoke volumes to me, because I think many times you may have individuals who are empathic and recognize, but they're quiet and their silence can be deafening. So with you highlighting the importance of us acknowledging but also speaking out as well, I am encouraged, because that will trickle down to our young people and encourage them to do the same and have a new generation of open-mindedness, hopefully moving forward. So thank you so much for I just have a comment, I'm just talking. But thank you so very much for what you do, and please continue to do it.
Okay, Rosina, thank you very much for all that you do. Just continue to forge right ahead. Okay. Routine matters. Financial report. Approval of the financial report for the period ending April 30th, 2019. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the period ending April 30th, 2019. May I have a motion? And a second?
Second.
All right. Questions and discussion?
So, Chip, it's mano y mano on your last one. Here we go. Let's do it. All right. So if you turn to page 22, the financial report, general fund, the projected balance. There will be some slight and minor changes, but for the most part, this is pretty set with a general fund balance projected of $1.444 million going back to the town. If you go into the page 23, again, minor updates, nothing really to highlight except for maybe line 5117, the paraprofessional salaries is a minor update, and that just, it's the turnover that's demonstrated there. And then 5142, custodial overtime. This was the first detailed estimate, and it had to do with snow removal. And then 5180, the lower fill rate, especially among the daily subs, which is showing 38,000. So a total of $44,000, which is also represented on page 22 as well. If you turn the page to or the benefits, nothing to really report on benefits, unemployment, Social Security. So nothing there to report. Then the state federal grant funds on the next page. As you know, everything above the line is for next year. Everything below the line is this year. Minor changes. Really, again, nothing to really report. It's kind of a dull report. I apologize for it. These are the days when Jay Sargent used to, really put on a show. And I have yet to be able to do that. So no changes there. And then in the special funds, some minor changes. I know Chip has talked about it before, but the continuing education, they're going to transfer that program to leisure services, 2019-20, and they'll zero out the balance for that. Nutritional services on page 26. Again, we're doing very well, and this hasn't been something that over the last 7 years that we can really talk about, but recently we're finally doing well. The meal counts are flat, but federal revenue is up, and expenses are down, and I know that Chip has talked about our manager there that's helping with that. The wage increase for 18-19 is not yet included in that, but we'll still see some benefits. And then compared to 17-18, we had 4 extra serving days, and that's worth about $50,000, and that's that snow days that we didn't have. But this will all catch up in June, and they're anticipating 130 to 140 surplus at the end of the year, right? 130 to 140 is the surplus at the end of the year. So I just, part of this financial report, and I said it when we first began, and maybe I'd never articulated it, and Deb, I know that you're work at that state level, but the teachers' pensions didn't go through, and when I tried to convince this group not to put that in towards the mill rate, which it is at $250-ish thousand, now we're giving back 1.4. So if you were looking for where that money could have come out in case we didn't decide right, this is where it would have come out of. So we're giving back, and that mill rate, that 1.4 million was a mill rate last year, and it's nothing against. Chip does a phenomenal job. That exists there because of the ebb and flow and things like that. So, but on the average, it's been there for many years. So that's why I talked about that. Now that we have that the legislation didn't go through, that extra $250,000 have gone to our mill rate this year for the taxpayer. So I just want to highlight that as the last financial piece here. But that's anything I can add, or Chip?
An excellent summary, as usual, Mark. Thank you so much.
Oh, and we talked about this in the meeting, which isn't reflective in here, the $15 minimum wage pass. We won't see that until a few years down the road, and it'll be a minimal impact. And I think it's 2021 that we'll see that.
Well, it impacts different unit.
Right.
Nutrition services will see an impact. Our lowest wage for nutrition services is $10.71, though that contract's not settled yet. So it go up to $11 on October 1st. So it'll be a modest impact there, a couple $1,000.
Yeah, but nothing.
But that's the only real union that it's going to impact. Everyone else will stay above the $15. But then there'll be the wage compression, and we'll have to see what happens with that it depends on the ebb and flow of the economy.
Right.
But the other thing is a lot of people, the minimum wage is a minimum wage, but most of our wages come with benefits. So there's that advantage that will impact our negotiation.
Any additional questions? Hearing none.
Are we ready for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Chip, excellent last one.
And I just want to say thank you very much. It's been a wonderful 22 years. It's been a great opportunity and a pleasure to serve all of you for the last 20 years. And I think the district is in excellent hands. Thank you.
Okay, well, Chip, before you leave then, so on behalf of the board, we just have a small token of appreciation for all that you've done.
So Chip, I just want to say, and you'll see this maybe written somewhere else, is that you've been a rock star for us, truly. And I know that you. Yeah, no, that's fine. We.
That's what's in the envelope.
Yes. Yeah, you knew it'd work out, didn't you? You've been a rock star, and I know that you have a passion, and that I hope that your soles on your boots find you many years of happy rocks underneath your feet as well. So enjoy your retirement.
Thank you. All right, we're moving to the approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes of the May 21st, 2019 regular Board of Education meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Discussion and questions. So I'll start. There's a couple of typos in the minutes, and let me just get to it real quickly. I've already made Cammie aware, so those corrections will be made and will be brought back to the next meeting for signature. So it was the last page, next to Kim Hughes, there was a comma, and it shouldn't have been a comma, and the Soul Fire Farm is actually 3 different words. And then I believe there was another, page 2.
Students in schools.
I don't see it, so. Oh, right, so the other one was all students in schools, so there was an apostrophe. I didn't mention this one to you, Cammie, where there shouldn't be, and then there was another on the next page where there was a semicolon, and I believe it should be a colon. Did anybody else see anything else? Okay. So with those necessary corrections, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next up is information and reports, and we're going to have the non-staff communication report go first, which is the reports from student board representatives. Who wishes to go first?
All right, Chip, Mr. Ward, I don't know what to call you, it's my last one too, so let's do this. Hey everyone, so I'd like to start by thanking Conrad's principal, Mr. Duarte, as well as the rest of the student body for the opportunity to do this year. It was a really interesting job. I'm very glad that I got the chance to do this and answer your questions and be a part of the board this year. Thank you all. So, we at Conard, we're kind of in final countdown mode. All of the classes are starting to wind down as people are preparing. People who have final exams are preparing for them. So basically, everyone who's not a senior. Last day of classes for seniors is Thursday. For everybody else, it's Friday, and then finals are going to run Monday through Thursday. Seniors are preparing for graduation. We just got our cap and gowns yesterday, and we're super excited. The Conard and Hall improv teams, Conard's group The Parachute and Hall's The Answer, performed this weekend at a place called CT in Hartford. It was a really great opportunity for them to perform, and I've heard it was a really great show. The Unified Theater group also presented their show at Conard. West Hartford's registers of voters visited Conard last week as part of their annual high school registration outreach program. They helped out students who are going to be 18 years old by November 5th with registering to vote, and it was really great to have them there. Students are very excited for voting in November. It's mostly junior students, I believe, who are going to be eligible to vote. I don't think they worked with seniors. Ms. Tringali and her dad, Dr. Bacall, talked about the story of his parents to Conard students who were Holocaust survivors. And today there was the duck walk in the school hallways. I'll explain what that is. So every year in one of the courtyards that's like totally surrounded by hallways from the outside, this same duck, who I believe is named Connie, has a flock of ducklings in there. So every year they open up the doors to the corridor, which are pretty much always locked. I honestly don't know why. And some of the staff helps walk them over to the Rockledge Golf Course so they can live not trapped in the building. There's a great video on the Conard Twitter feed. I'd highly recommend checking it out. The student council elections for next year's officers recently finished up last week. Congratulations to the new president, John Zaire, and everyone else who was elected. The new Board of Ed rep, who's going to be sitting here next year, has not yet been decided. High school students from all over West Hartford who will be joining the military after graduation were honored at a dinner here at the town hall. And the junior and senior proms were over the last 2 weeks. Everyone there had a great time. This was mentioned earlier with the school welcoming thing, but the 8th graders who are going to be attending Conard next year took their day in the life tours so that they could, get the feel of the building before they enter next year. And finally, students who are taking AP or ECE exams or AP or ECE classes next year took their AP preview sessions. Thank you.
Sorry, mine's a little bit longer tonight because I had a few things I wanted to say, but I will start off by saying things are wrapping up for the school year and the countdown to graduation is on. Today was College T-shirt Day, and it was great to see all of our seniors sporting their college gear. I run The Answer, which is the Hall Comedy Improv group, and we perform with Parachute, as Gus said, at CT Improv this weekend. It was a super great event, and it was so cool to do kind of a school thing. It was very fun. Senior prom was on Saturday. We had a great time. And tonight was Hall's first Girls Night Out concert, which was also the reason I was late, which was such a fun event. We sang Super Trooper, No Scrubs, and Burn from Hamilton, so definitely not your average choir repertoire. Tomorrow is Fictional Character Day, which is where Hall's SPS acting classes spend the day completely immersed in character from our favorite fictional books and movies. So rumor has it the Queen of Hearts and Babette from Beauty and the Beast will be making an appearance, so I'm super excited for that. On the athletic side, the boys track team just got first in states and second in state opens, and the girls track team got second in states, and boys golf recently won CCCs, so congratulations to all the teams. A really incredible season. Hall will be hosting a blood drive after school tomorrow, which will be our third of the year, so go support that if you can. Last week was our military dinner to celebrate all the students from both Hall and Conard going into the military, and we are so proud of them for their dedication to service. And finally, I want to announce that my friend Izzy Galm, great, wonderful person, will be the Hall Board of Ed representative next year. So I'm sure you will love her, and she's super excited about this. So, some thoughts. Now that I'm graduating, I have been reflecting a lot on my time in the West Hartford public school system and have some thoughts that I want to share tonight. First, I want to take a moment to thank all those who have helped me get where I am today. It is no secret that the West Hartford public school system is known for its outstanding educators. Every single one of my teachers has taught me so much more than just what's on the lesson plan. They have taught me to advocate for myself, to make the most of every opportunity I'm given, to embrace failure at every corner, to understand that there are some things beyond my control, and that hard work and a kind heart never goes unnoticed. I'm so thankful for their investment in me as a student. It is hard to find teachers more dedicated to their profession than the ones we have here in West Hartford. There is so much they do that goes unrecognized, whether it's spending part of their paycheck on new books for the classroom, or staying late to help the kid who just can't get the hang of subtraction. I know just how lucky I am to have gone through a school system that sees me as a person and not just a statistic, that values my well-being just as much as my test scores, and that encourages me to be a musician, an actor, and athlete as well as a student. But while there are many wonderful things about our schools, of course there are issues as well. I believe we're too hyper-focused on standardized testing. I believe our sex education curriculum needs to be more comprehensive, and that the gifted and talented program makes too many kids feel inadequate from a young age. But one of the best things about our school system is that it's constantly striving to be better. And every time I've wanted to do something about those aforementioned problems, there has always been a teacher or administrator willing to meet with me about it. As put in my favorite TV show, West Wing, education is the silver bullet. Education is everything. And I know that mine here in West Hartford has been second to none. My 13 years in the West Hartford public school system has instilled a love of learning and a passion for change making in me, and I couldn't be more prepared and excited for my future. Finally, I want to thank everyone on the board for all the work you do and for making my experience as a student representative so memorable. The board's unwavering commitment to working with our community in order to promote student well-being and success is truly admirable. Sometimes I look at our federal government and feel discouraged. I'm sure many of you feel the same way. It too often feels as if our elected officials are only concerned with scoring partisan points and furthering their own interests. But locally, having the opportunity to witness and even partake in this board's discussion and debate has taught me the importance of listening to those with differing viewpoints than my own. It has taught me that we can disagree without being disagreeable. And most importantly, being a part of this board has taught me that when we operate under the assumption that public servants have good intentions at heart, we will begin to see that we have so much more in common than we believe. After spending a year as part of this group, I can say with confidence that every single member, regardless of policy position, has the best interests of our students in mind. And that gives me so much hope. Being a student representative has given me skills in consensus building and effective communication that I know I will carry with me for a long time to come, and it has renewed my commitment to public service. Thank you to everyone here who works so tirelessly to create the best opportunities for every kid in West Hartford. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to clap. Thank you both to both of you, Megan and Gus. And we have some cards to go along with those gifts. But I just, on behalf of the board, I just want to thank you for all that you've contributed all year long, your thought-provoking questions, your dialogue with the rest of the board members here, representing your students and the student body. I know that you're proud, but the student body back at Conard and Hall have to be equally proud of both of you, as well as your parents, the teachers, and everybody who've held you high to bring you to this particular point. And I can only wish you the very best at the next level of your educational careers and whatever you choose to do beyond that. But you have definitely brought it forward, and you have the people who are going to follow you have great shoes, but you are the greatest role model for this district and for all the students that you represent. And so I thank you for what you've done here today. Okay. Board members' communication reports from other boards and organizations. Do we have anything? I want to do something before we get to you, Cheryl, and that is this week there was a tragic accident on I-84. Most of you probably heard of that, where there was a bus driver that was killed in an accident with a tractor trailer. That bus driver drove a first student bus that was contracted by the CREC schools, and so I just feel compelled, since we're part of CREC, just to offer condolences to the CREC community, as well as to the families and students that were impacted by that by the loss of that bus driver. Okay, so nobody else has anything, right, that they have to report?
Sorry I was late tonight. So I just wanted to mention, I know it's late, but I had the privilege of participating in the Witness Stones project last week. Thank you, Lorna, for inviting me and speaking. But and also there was a master of ceremonies, a younger Zdanowitz that did an excellent job. I was there for King Philip's Middle School's presentation, and just kind of piggybacking on Rosanna's presentation and just West Hartford and everything everyone said today, it was one of those just feel-good moments, and it was very educational, and the kids all did a fantastic job, and I just wanted to say that if you haven't been, to people in the community or even fellow board members, it's something to experience. It was a great experience, and I enjoyed it immensely, so thank you.
Okay, so it brings us to our dear colleague, Dr. Cheryl Greenberg, whose last meeting will be tonight. But I will leave the reason why it's her last meeting to her. But what I want to say is, on behalf of the board, and I'm sure that others will say their piece, is I have thoroughly enjoyed serving on this board with you, Cheryl. You have brought nothing but great dialogue, provocative discussions. You've always been very, what's the word I want to use? Encouraging for others to be a part of the discussion. And so for that, I thank you. It was important for you to make sure that all voices were heard, whether we agreed with you or not. And I think that's important, just as Megan pointed out. Everybody at this table brings something different, and it's all, we're all contributing to the better educational experience for our students in this district, and also for our teaching staff and our administrative staff to also learn new things each and every day. So you're a teacher at heart, and you're all about, we're never too old or too young to learn more. And so I just want to personally thank you for all that you've done and all that you continue to do for the board and on this district. And I wish you well in the next phase and next chapter of your life. There's more, just unfortunately, since I was trying to get here quickly, I left it at home, but I will get it to you. Why don't we let everybody go around and then you speak last. Mark?
All right, so because you said on behalf of the board, I just want to go a little bit backwards a little bit, if you don't mind, really quickly. Gus, and I just want to thank you for your time here and service. You guys have done an exceptional job, and it shows, and Conard and Hall are better schools for having you here. And, you know, Gus, I'm going to miss your radio voice. I don't know if you knew that, but we were like, dang, this guy should be in radio. You've got a TV too, not, you know, you're a good looking kid too. So, but I don't mean it that way. Some people say radio voice, yeah, right. So, but you guys have done an exceptional job, and you should be very, very proud of your service here. And all I want to is encourage you to continue to serve your communities, wherever that may be, wherever that brings you, your colleges, your peers, your community, because it's important to give back, and it's very rewarding. So, you know, I took your words, Megan, to heart. They were very well thought out, and I think I sit on the other side of the fence as you, at least is maybe politically. And for what you said, I do really appreciate that, because I do come to this table without a political agenda, a zero political agenda, quite honestly. So that meant a lot, and you recognizing all of us that do that, it means a lot, so thank you. I just wanted to get back to that because you. So Cheryl, you and I politically I know are opposite ends of the spectrum, and we are very far at the opposite ends of the spectrum, but yet we come together. And the reason, well, there's no reason why or anything that we're such opposite on that, but it's encouraging to know that I can actually have a debate with you. You listen, and we can actually disagree. And oftentimes I heard, I agree with Mark. And, you know, those were like, wow.
With surprise in my voice.
Yeah, right. I was like, who's she talking to? Is she really, is there another Mark here? But no, so I appreciate that. And it just goes to show that when you come to this table without a political agenda, you can reasonably disagree and you can reasonably agree. And I really did appreciate that. And, you know, we often didn't agree, but we really didn't, it didn't matter. It was a matter of, you know, what's best in our minds for the community. But we often did agree, and that was encouraging and well. So I appreciate the amount of time, the effort that you put into this. The service that you did to your community will be always recognized forever, and we found out why, because we have pictures in the hallway, so you'll always be remembered for that. And I know the community is a better place for having you on this board, and I appreciate the service that you've done, and I appreciate the the things that I've learned from you, quite honestly, through the years. Once you leave, you were the second longest serving board member, and so that will go to someone else, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But appreciate it. Always diligent, and I don't read the minutes to approve them because I know she's going to catch the commas and apostrophes, and I leave that in her good hands because I sat on a committee with her where I was like, oh, my job's done here. I'm good. So I don't have to proofread those. Those are pages I could skip. But so thank you, and good luck in your endeavors going forward. And I think so. I don't want to let the bag, but I think for college sabbatical, right? So I don't know what I think, right? But I don't know. But anyway, whatever you're doing next, just go out and put as much energy as you put into this to the Board of Ed. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to I'll start with Gus here, if I may. I like this. We'll just give a shout out to everybody. But Gus, thank you for your representation of Conard. We all appreciated that, and learning that you were an Eagle Scout. And one of my fun stories about Gus is that I got to meet his mother and at a different meeting, and she was so proud. And I bet you she's watching TV right now because she's proud of you. Yeah, so keep up the great work. And then you, I know when I first met you, and that's when you also knew Dr. Morrow as a principal at Bristow, and your performance in Beauty and the Beast. And that was awesome, and it still is awesome. Yeah, which character were you? I can't think of her name. No, was it Beauty and the Beast? Okay, no, it was the other one about Under the Sea. Ursula, yes, that's what it was. Okay. But you were an excellent fork, too. All right. That's great. And Cheryl, when we first met, it was just a really neat story because there were a number of people interested in filling seats on the Board of Ed, and there were interviews. And we were all I took it like a job interview. I think you did, too, and Carol. And that was great. And thank you for everything we've been able to do over the years. We ran as a slate, the three of us, and that was just a great experience, and Mark, it almost feels like the four of us ran together because we were unopposed, and our debate was a kumbaya moment, if I may. And we found at that debate on WHC TV that we had so much in common in agreement on what's good for the kids, and it's been neat to see that over the years. So thank you so much. You took the toughest slot in filling an empty seat and having to run an election in November, and then for the full term the following 2 years later. So thank you for taking that on as well. One of the things we do with what's neat about the Board of Ed is we have different backgrounds. Mark and I are kind of more business, and you and Marco V were the education people, and I told Mark, he was the pedagogy guy. I couldn't even say the word, and then you took. You took on that role too, and now we're going to have to step up and make sure that we keep that education background in mind as well. So thank you so much for all you've taught us and all the good work you've done. Wish you best in the future.
I will start off as well. Megan and Gus, thank you so much for your service. We greatly appreciate all that you've done, and certainly are inspired by your tenacity and inspired by your willingness to speak up, even in moments of difficult subject matter. So those are skill sets that are going to serve you well moving ahead. And thank you so much for representing your student bodies in the way that you have. And for you, Dr. Cheryl, I want to say, I'm not going to say goodbye, just wish you well. You certainly have been a valuable asset to the board. I'm still, I guess, considered a newbie, this only being my second year, but you certainly have made it a transition, one that has been informative, one that has been inspiring. The piece that I very much respect about you is that you show so much compassion for those that you work with and those that you serve. and you are passionate about what you do, not only during these meetings, but also outside of these meetings as well, with the work that you do teaching at Trinity, the volunteer work you do, the speaking engagements, and touching and talking about subject matters that many people shy away from. And that goes to the comment I made before in recognizing all of the wonderful work that Rosina is doing. You are doing that as well. So as you move on to the next chapter in your life, I encourage for you to continue to do you, to continue to be passionate, to continue to show the compassion you show for those who may not have others to speak on their behalf. And thank you so much for representing our young people, and thank you so much for being the genuine person and advocating for those all around.
So it's to me, and I'll echo everyone else's comments to Gus and Megan. It's been really great for me, particularly this year, as I also have a senior in high school, to have your input to help inform our discussion. So thank you for being forthcoming with your input and seeking input from your fellow students and bringing that forward to us, because sometimes it's hard for us to really know what students are thinking. So your role is really valuable on the board. And to my seatmate, Cheryl, I really want to thank you, first off, for helping to sort of orient me to the board when I came on about a year and a half ago. You really helped me through some of the logistics and processes and norms for board members. I think that's something that is maybe not known by the public, that when you do run for office and you have the opportunity to serve your community, there are just a few things that you need to learn about how things work. And it's great to have a mentor to guide you through that process. And I really appreciate you taking on that role for me. I will, too, miss your status as the one educator on the board. Hopefully you'll send us your thoughts, as you will still have the opportunity to do that as a person, a West Hartford resident. And your intelligence, your thoughtfulness, and your passion for educating the students in our town. I just really appreciate that about you, and I'm grateful to have been able to serve with you. And to much chocolate in your future.
So, I understand that there's tradition here. So there is this is for the listeners at home and the few that remain in the audience, but you already know this stuff. So there's a beautiful wooden chair towards the rear of where we're seating. And this chair usually goes to the board member who's coming off the board, representing our district, so the West Hartford Public Schools. So on behalf of the West Hartford Board of Education, Dr. Cheryl Greenberg, you are being presented with this beautiful chair to take with you, and our superintendent of schools will make sure that this chair is delivered to you appropriately.
That's wine in the car.
When you sit in this chair and probably grade your papers or read that book that you've been longing to read, we would love for you to think of us back here in West Hartford. And again, wishing you nothing but the best that life has to offer.
Well, thank you all. So sorry.
I'm a little tired. I don't know, like it just kind of skipped over me and I was like, oh, were we supposed to go in order? And I just didn't pay attention or something. Maybe I was that kid in school. Anyway, I also wanted to offer my appreciation to your service on this board. Backing up for a second, same to you guys. Just like everybody else, I'm in awe of you. I mean, it's not lost to me that you're 18-year-old seniors and you have a lot going on in your life. And I mean, I was 18 a million years ago. So I know that, you guys have been great representatives. You just like everybody else, you've done a great job this year. So don't think that we don't appreciate you. And, good luck with all your future endeavors. Proud of you. Cheryl, so just like Mark, we haven't always agreed on things, but, what you said, good people can disagree. I think that's a phrase our superintendent likes to use a lot, and I've stolen it in other meetings, just so you know. And it rings true. And what Megan said, I think, is very true of you and everyone on this board, that, politics at the local level is much more refreshing than sometimes it gets lost at the higher echelons. And so, we disagree, but you've always brought a well thought out point of view. I've never doubted that. We just haven't always agreed. But I know that your dedication is second to none on this board, and the town is better for it. So, just like everybody else, I wish you well in all your future endeavors and on your trips. So good luck. Take the floor.
Thank you, and certainly didn't mean to cut you off. Before I respond, and while I collect myself, I actually am going to refer to you again in my comments, but I do want to specially single you out and say that I so appreciate not only that you bring information from the schools, but also that you share your own perspectives with us. You're both really thoughtful and insightful, and we are, as someone else said, rather far from your age, and it's really been so helpful in so many ways. So, and you've won other things, and you're going on to great things, and we know that, but we're so grateful that you took the time to be with us for a while. So thank you. So as you now have gathered, I'll be resigning my position on the Board of Education on September 2nd. So this is, of course, my last formal meeting. In my other job, I'm a professor at Trinity College, and I was eligible for a sabbatical last year, but I postponed it until now, or next year, so that I could serve out 4 years on the board. Because I won't be in West Hartford during my sabbatical, I'll be obviously unable to continue serving after the summer. So my colleagues will appoint an interim member in September who will serve until the election. At that point, he or she may choose to run to complete my term, as any other candidate, of course, may. But let me take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the voters of West Hartford for giving me the privilege of serving you. I ran because I valued everything that the public schools had given to my own children, and I wanted to make sure that every child received those benefits, and I tried throughout my time to protect and expand those programs and services that we provide. To the extent that I succeeded, I credit my colleagues on the board, and I want to take a minute to thank them. We have certainly had our share of disagreements, but I have always believed that every single member was deeply committed to our schools and to all the students that they serve. We asked hard questions of each other, certainly, and of administrators, and we grappled seriously with every issue that came in front of us. I really valued our robust debates, and I often found myself changing my initial views because of them, often to Mark's surprise. I also appreciate the engagement and participation of the student members that we've had every year, particularly you guys, who have shared your thoughts and your unique perspectives with us. And I'm proud of the number of votes that cut across party lines, which suggests that deliberations were done in good faith among all of us. I've learned so much from all of you, and I'm truly proud of the work that we've done. It's really been a privilege. I'm also grateful to Tom Moore, a superintendent whose skills and vision are topped only by his integrity, his compassion, and his commitment to support every single child. And to the administrators, teachers, and support staff who work on behalf of those same children every single day in ways both public and invisible, many of which you've heard about today. Being on the board has given me even greater insight into what it is that you do and the impact that you have, and it's an honor to have been able to work with you all. Finally, I am grateful to live in a community like West Hartford, which strongly supports education in every way and is willing to step forward and make their views known. I've tried to represent you and the values that we hold as a community as best as I could, and I thank you for that opportunity.
How about a round of applause?
All right, moving to the next agenda item, future business. Announcement of future meeting dates. Thursday, September 3rd, 2019, regular Board of Education.
Tuesday. Right?
Tuesday, September 3rd.
Yeah, Tuesdays.
Regular Board of Education meeting, 7 p.m., Town Hall, 50 South Main Street, right here in the Legislative Chamber, room 314. And then Tuesday, September 17th, 2019, regular Board of Education meeting, 7 p.m., right here, Town Hall, in this Legislative Chamber, Room 314. Request for any future agenda items?
No, just mention graduation for the public. It's Thursday, June 13th, and this will be, unfortunately, and I won't make it to this. This will be the first graduation. I can't make it, and I waited to the last minute. It's for good reasons. My daughter made nationals for running, so I have to go there. And thanks. That's not why, but I just feel that this is my first graduation I'm missing, and I don't know. It just kind of hits my heavy heart. So please, I'll be there in spirit, and I want to see pictures.
Thank you, Mark. All right, so hearing no requests for future agenda items, I don't believe we have any comments from visitors. We don't have any executive session, so may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.